I call to order the work session of the Hillsboro directors at 5:19. Our first item of business is to discuss the Western Washington County Joint Accountability and Advocacy visit. Oh, so we're going to start off with me because it was first of all, I just want to say it was a great experience to go to schools in Hillsboro and Forest Grove, and I wanted to say thank you to Christy Kotke, who got this idea, and then we sort of talked about it back and forth, and it came to fruition. Thank you to both teams on both districts who did, the legwork to put this together, because it was a lot of information, and, our schools can be so similar yet so different at the same time, but our needs can also be the same, especially when it comes to, our SPED cap or PERS or just funding in general and how the structures come, especially at a time where we're finding ourselves where our enrollment is declining, some students aren't attending school because of certain circumstances, we finding ourselves time to focus on what was happening in our schools and the good things that are happening, the great things that district is doing on behalf of our schools and our community, Hillsboro and Forest Grove and Cornelius, because we got to see Cornelius Elementary, even though we have students who live in Cornelius at Cornelius Elementary, those are all FG students, and so it was wonderful to see their new school too. It's a very well developed, beautiful, and just the immersion that they have there is wonderful. And I wanted to also kick it off to my fellow board members who got to participate, and if they wanted to share anything that, they enjoyed or the best part of this visit. Okay, go ahead, Jessica.
I think the highlight for me was being able to listen to our students, specifically like the nursing panel that we got to hear from. That really stuck to me because they were just talking so confidently, like they're already like out of school professionals doing this work for a living. Like that's how they sounded, and to me that was really inspiring, and makes me really excited for our programs to grow. I appreciated that. I love seeing the hands-on stuff too. We got to see the construction and comparing to the other schools, just seeing how well advanced we are and how much our students are doing and how much these actual classes, programs are actually giving back as well. They're building things that are going back to our community, to our families, and I just really, really love that. And then I agree with being able to do it in partnership with Forest Grove was really nice. For me, it was a really great learning opportunity too, to see how many things we are doing that are very similar, and being able to kind of see where what they're doing that's a little more maybe what we want to aspire to, and then also the other way around, like being able to kind of show off some of the things that we're doing and being able to see them being like, ooh, so it felt very, very collaborative, and my hope is that we can continue to do more of those trips, and hopefully next time we'll have other people, not just, representatives at this time, but more that could definitely learn so much from having these tours.
Okay. No? Mark?
Special thanks to Rose and Brooke. I think the other folks in our district who made that work from our end, and thanks to the staff and Forest Grove made it happen. Before I forget, if anybody has a picture of that cutting board, I'm trying to describe it to Ginny, and I can't figure out how to do it. So, did anybody get a picture of that cutting board when we were there? No, no. At Forest Grove High School. It was very cool. If you were there, it was very cool. It looked like three-dimensional sculpture, but it was a cutting board. It's amazing. Being able to see their construction program, been an admirer of the Viking House. Sorry I didn't get a chance to go to that site. We had to go, but hope to visit that sometime. And yeah, it makes me super proud as a board member when we get to show off all the amazing things like the nursing program and the construction programs that we have. Yeah. So thank you guys. I know it was probably a lot of work to put together, and thank you for doing it. It feels like it was worth it.
Another thing I'll add is first, immense amount of coordination with just all fronts. So really appreciate everything that went on behind the scenes. What really resonated with me was proud to be HSD, that we always say isn't necessarily just a slogan, but I feel like our students really embody that. And when they graduate, they actually come back into our community. And we saw a couple of instances of that. For example, one of the students who graduated from the medical assistant program, she actually works for Virginia Garcia and now helps orient other students who actually go through that program. And so the fact that folks are coming back, and I think there was another gentleman from the construction program who graduated, and then in his role in his current company, he also comes back and kind of helps out and further enhances the program and provides those partnerships. And I feel like just those things just give a little bit of hope for when our students graduate. They're also carrying that pride with them into wherever they go, into the communities or the workspaces that they go to. And so that was just really cool to see all of that kind of coming together.
I just wanted to add that inspiring to hear what you all came away with, what impressed you in the tour. And Superintendent West and Brooke Nova and Arturo Lomeli, who's the superintendent, we share a lot of philosophical stuff in common about what accountability should look like. And we're going around following economists and industry leaders who are saying, look at these NAEP scores, schools are tanking, all that, and trying to counter that with a different narrative, which is what does accountability look like in a place like Hillsboro? Addressing early literacy that's bilingual and getting kids inspired about career pathways and setting them off with opportunities through our career pathways programs. And couldn't we talk about accountability that way? And I've been bringing up a student who now works at Genentech who came through our bioscience program, and I went and found his test scores. Didn't pass his Smarter Balanced Assessment test in 4th and 8th grade. And so we need to be remembering that the end of the story for students is complicated, it's complex, and that the systems we're putting in place is that we are creating. Really appreciated the opportunity to tell that and show that so that we could be in those preschool and 3rd grade classrooms where we see bilingual kids and then we see the career trajectories of them later. Thank you for your time, and thanks.
No, I really appreciate that the board has as a goal advocacy this year as we head into the short session. So I would just say, and I took a lot of notes, if there's anything that we can help support as we go into the short session in terms of advocacy. I know that Representative McLean had asked for especially that highlight around the through line of accountability and then attendance, and how career and technical education, our students who are in CTE have a higher attendance rate or grad rates. That really resonated, I think, with our elected officials of that data with the accountability piece and what we highlighted through our dual and Spanish Lit and career tech ed. So if there's anything like that, for example, that is needed as you head into that, please just let us know, because that's love that such a commitment of coming that day, but I know there's such hard work ahead for everyone, so just continue to reach out to us.
Thank you. Thank you again to everyone who made this happen. And then our next agenda item is the bond development with Beth.
Yes, do you mind if I come and present from up here? I really wish I had a really long, pointer stick. For whatever reason, I've been intentionally having a long pointer stick. I only have a pen, so I'm going to have to make that work. So, really excited to spend some time talking to you about our bond development process. You've had a couple of different updates on this, but this, I feel like, is going to be much more of a holistic overview of where we've been, where we're at right now, and what's coming next. I've got about 20 slides to go through, and I would really appreciate it if it works for you all for me to get through the slides, maybe note any questions along the way. Hopefully I'll answer them before we get to the end, but then we can go through any questions you might have at the end, if that's all right. Just first of all, wanted to do a little bit of context setting and to get you in the mindset of why this bond is going to look a little bit different than the one we did in 2017. Why is that the case? Well, back in 2017, we were growing in enrollment, and with the promise of the starting of construction down in South Hillsboro, we thought, you know, we are going to be flooded with kids. We're already having some experiences where we're getting close to capacity at some of our schools. So we had a situation where we knew we needed to build some new schools, build a replacement school, and so we had construction on the horizon. We still had schools that didn't have air conditioning. We still had schools that had gym and cafetoriums, and just some real structural issues that needed to be addressed last time around. And some of those big projects really gave us a lot of excitement around what was to come and the fact that, you know, we're a growing, thriving community, and here we go. Now, we are still a growing, thriving community. However, the situation we find ourselves in today is one of, you know, shrinking enrollment, not just in Hillsboro, around the state. There's been a lot of students that we experienced in a big way around COVID, and the recovery from that, while it has come to some extent and has leveled out in terms of our level of loss of students, we are just not seeing the need for more capacity at this time. We're not in the situation where we are actively needing to build new schools. Things have just changed since COVID. People had experience with what it was like to possibly learn online, possibly not be attending school regularly and on time every day. You know, and I think just in general, our political and economic realities are just a little bit more tenuous today than they might have felt back in 2016 when we were planning for the 2017 bond. I think we've just experienced norms that you used to be able to count on just aren't necessarily the same as they were. So that's the context. We knew that we were coming up on this opportunity in the fall of 2026 where there was going to be a drop-off in our rate of repayment for previous bonds that was going to give us the opportunity, like it did in 2017 and in years past, to fill in a gap created in what would otherwise be a drop in rates. So we knew that we needed to get current on all of our capital needs across the district and bring together a cross-functional group of community members to start looking at those needs and talking about the ways we can put those together into some bond packages to float to our community. There we go. So here's kind of a planning cycle. I know we showed this to you in our previous update, just kind of the way we, in a 50,000-foot view, how we move through the process. Our bond development committee has met 6 times since September. We've had 6 two-hour meetings to go through all of the information. And in our last meeting last week, the group spent some time looking at our core project list and kind of talking about things that could potentially be added as bolt-ons, which we're going to talk about a little bit more here in a second. So the project list, how did we determine the universe of need, or the top of the funnel as we've talked about it before? So these were things that we weren't able to get done in our 2017 bond. There are things that have been on a list of projects maintained by our facilities crew for known issues that they're having with roofs, with HVAC, with building envelope, with water systems, with lighting, all sorts of things like that. Compliance with laws and regulations that may have changed in the interim. A walkthrough. Every building had the opportunity of a one-on-one walkthrough with Ugo, our safety manager to go through safety systems. We had an ODE facilities assessment of every single school building, and that generated a list of opportunities for us. And then, of course, school and program requests, and then the leaders who oversee each functional area weighing in on what needs they're seeing in their spaces. So that then generated a list of projects in these categorical areas: building systems, tech, extracurricular, transportation. You can see the list there. Other considerations: ADA compliance, Title IX compliance, building codes, seismic standards, state laws, opportunities to partner with outside agencies and or leverage outside dollars for things like energy efficiency upgrades. And that generated a top of the funnel $617 million in needs that were identified through that process. So there we go. This is just a snapshot of what is an extremely large and complicated spreadsheet, which I did give you all of you access to earlier today, some examples of which are available on the walls for you. These are the exact same materials, just in 2 different locations. If we have enough time, you can kind of do a little gallery walk or get a little bit better sense of some of the things that our BDC had access to at their meeting last week. So let's talk about bonding capacity and taxes and how those things interplay. So typically when we head into a bond development process, we have a situation like I described earlier where some previous the repayment schedule for previous bonds, either previous bonds are expiring or the repayment schedule has a built-in drop that allows a gap that then allows you to potentially fill that in pending voter approval to generate new money to do needed projects. Those, we kind of plan those drops in repayments and or full repayments of old bonds to happen around every 10 years. That's approximately the time horizon that we work within, right? So last time around in 2017, we had approximately $1.24 per thousand of a gap that was going to be created. If we didn't fill that gap in, the rate would have gone down to about $1 per thousand and then there were savings for taxpayers in our community. But we had the opportunity to fill that in and go back up to what was kind of the current rate being charged, which was about $2.24 per thousand. That generated us $408 million, right? So it's kind of, that's what it was, that's what it would drop to if you didn't fill it in. This little bracket shows you that opportunity gap there. This time around, it's a little different because we had that big anomaly of the Intel Strategic Investment Plan expiration, which meant $7 billion of value came onto our tax rolls, and it dramatically dropped the rates that everybody paid this taxing year. And that's going to be the situation again next year. It doesn't really reflect what has been the reality for us over the last 20 plus years. The reality for us over the past 20 plus years is we've been close to that $2. We've been kind of slightly over that $2 per thousand range for the last 20 years. So it puts us in a strange position. And I just want to give voice to that because there could be the feeling amongst you that every time we talk about this, you're coming to us with a different number. Why is that? Do you not know what you're talking about? Well, we do. It's just, it's a situation that just isn't experienced. In fact, our bond consultant, Jeremy Wright, who has overseen many bond processes for districts all across the state, says he has never seen a situation like this where the rate has dropped so precipitously, and we are in this position where really we could kind of pick a number of ways to look at what would essentially be kind of a consistent rate bond for our community, right? So, we could look at what will be the exact 2026 rate. That's anticipated to be $1.58 per thousand. That would generate approximately $312 million. We could look at a 3-year average of rates, taking our last 3 years of experience with rates. That would be about $1.81 or generate $380 million. We could look at our last 5 years of rates, should be $1.91 and generate $411.5 million. This is the number the BDC used last week, just for your reference. But as we were talking about this situation, there was a notion raised in the BDC, like, boy, you know, that $2 threshold, that feels like the threshold. That feels like the where we should be looking. And so, is there a way to get there that makes sense? And in fact, it's just looking at one more year of experience. If we do a 6-year average of rates, $1.97, $430 million. And what's interesting about that is that gets closer to what would be a realistic statement to say, we're just going to maintain the average rate since the last bond that we passed, right? And honestly, I think a version of that message would probably be the one we use, because any of this is a little bit much for tax. They don't care what math you're doing. They want to know what it means for them, right? I think any of these is a defensible position. I think what I'm going to need by the end of tonight from you all is kind of a head nod about what the board feels comfortable with, right? I would think it would probably be somewhere in these last two numbers, somewhere in here, but certainly want to know the direction from the board, because that is what I would like to go back to our BDC with, to kind of, because we don't want to go out to our community with two numbers. We want to go out to our community with one number and some options within that number, right? So $617 million universe of need. We have the opportunity to get roughly 2/3 of that done, 3/4 almost, depending on where we land. So another thing to keep in mind as you consider like what makes the most sense is that, again, we only go out for a bond about every 10 years, and it's a big deal, and it's a lot of work. And those of you who were involved in the 2017 bond understand that it's a lot of work. It's a big deal to ask our community to make this kind of consideration. So we have a responsibility to find that sweet spot. If we undercut it simply for the fact of saving, 10 or 20 cents per thousand in rates, but we hamstring ourselves in what we can accomplish as a system with our, with our infrastructure, with how we provide services to our students, with how we care for our staff, then we're not really doing them that big of a favor, right? We owe it to them to do the hard work behind the scenes, to come to them with what is both necessary and reasonable. So we got this great graphic from, this just shows you the most recently calculated, the 430, the 6-year average, which still keeps us below. This is our experience from the last 20 years is where we've been. And this is what it would be if we went with that 430. So this is a Venn diagram that I was just starting to talk about. So what the district needs, community priorities, and what voters want to pay, and where those things intersect is where you're going to find your winning bond, right? So we generated some guiding principles and shared these with the BDC last week, and you all have access to this. I don't know that I am going to go through them, but you can see the priorities that we came up with. Definitely prioritizing safety, comfort, and reliability, and being good fiscal stewards. I mean, those are two of our top priorities, right? We have others. We want to make sure we're looking at projects equitably across feeder systems, across schools, and that's not just based on the student population, that's based on the age of the facility, that's based on the needs of the facility, the needs of the community, different things like that. Two pages, but we have guiding principles that we asked our BDC to keep in mind. What we presented to them, what's on the sheets on the walls here, is what we called the immutable core. The immutable core was that $617 million categorized by each functional area leader into 4 different levels of priority. Level 4 being the highest priority in terms of immediate need, critical, like imminent failure and or regulatory requirements, different things that was like, what is the absolute highest level? Then level 3 would be obviously the next down two less of a immediate need, and then one. In the one category, there aren't many things in there, but those are more your nice to haves. If we could do it, if we could afford it, we would do it. Immutable core is level 4 projects. What we did though is to take those most important projects and which of them had elements to them that could potentially be carved off, just because if we knew we were working in some of those lower dollar amounts, we wanted to give the bond development committee some ability to have say in what else went in there. So for example, what's not in this number is kind of round 2 replacements of technology for students and teachers. It's needed, but we took it out just so that could be at least a choice point for folks. We took out the needed bus replacements after year 3. That allowed us to get down to this number. We took out the panic alert system that we had in there for safety, and a couple other things to get it down to this 344, roughly in these kind of falling in these buckets. As you can imagine, our most expensive area by far is buildings and systems, roofs, HVAC, those kind of things are extremely expensive. So, and we gave them the opportunity. So one of your options, we told them, is to add back what would be the full scope of level 4 core. Your things like the tech, the safety and security, some additional field work, reconstruction of stages being added back in, the out years of bus replacements, additional kitchen remodels could go back in, and then other needed projects. So adding those back in would take it back up to the 380, and then like I said, we were working on the $411.5 amount, so that gave the group about $22.5 million to play with to kind of look at the rest of the scope. So what's on these 3 laminated posters represents the remaining $617 million. What's not represented here, and then we said to folks, they had an electronic version that allowed them to toggle on different projects and that would auto add for them. So they could kind of see and play with different things to get different priorities. So what you see in those is, one bolt-on might be more focused on buildings and systems. One might have a little bit more of a bent toward extracurriculars and activities. Maybe you see a new standalone gym for Hill High in one of those, for example. And one might include partnership options. So also what we have here is that core scope, that immutable core scope. How does that play out by feeder pattern? And that, again, you can see in your printout as well as here. You can kind of see how that breaks down. And what was it in 2017? And some of those where you see the real high dollar amounts are the feeders that got new schools, for example, right? Or the new standalone gyms at the elementary level to get rid of cabbage inventoriums. So we have it broken down that way. Of course, we have it also broken down by building. You now have access to the matrix. You're welcome to look at that tab and look at that for yourself to see how that plays out. So next steps for us, like I said, tonight, I would like some initial direction from you all on the dollar amount you're comfortable with, us going back to the BDC and sharing with them. We will finalize kind of those 3 options. Core will stay the same for the 3 options. What will be different is that variable amount of projects at the end. Take those out to community meetings. Right now, we tentatively planned with our bond steering committee earlier today that we would do 3 of these, 2 in person and 1 virtual, with the first taking place on January 22nd in person, January 29th virtual, and February 5th in person. And location TBD, but probably we'll do the in-person ones kind of in a north-south fashion like we've done for other things, like a Glencoe Liberty feeder locale for one and a Century Hill High feeder locale for the other. And then we're going to also add in some specific outreach to our Spanish-speaking community as well. We'll work on with our consultants, ISO. And then we will pull our BDC back together in March to go over the feedback that we've received from those open house events. And we will move toward a single package recommendation. It's in this time frame too that we will poll our community. We'll work with our consultant Jeremy Wright, who works with Patinkin Research Strategies to do polling, and we will start polling some of these priorities within our bond package. Meet again in April, go over those results, and finalize our package recommendation and bring that to you for first reading in May, for hopeful approval in June, and then we'll be off to the races. So these are just some next steps. As I kind of talk through some of this, we'll be getting back to the BDC with additional information following this meeting, and then preparing for our community outreach in the winter. So now, that was a lot. Any questions that I can answer for any of my colleagues that are also with me on the bond steering committee?
I just wanted to make a note. On the 29th of January, there is a joint town hall planned at the Hillsboro Civic Center with Sosa, McLean, and Salmon. So I just wanted to call that out.
Religious holidays, I didn't see anything, and state of the city, and that wasn't happening, but thank you for that. So we might want to move that one. Okay, good. Joint town hall. How are we feeling about...
I had a question.
We have questions.
Well, it's about that, like, if we were to go for the highest, of course,
Yep.
and then you take it to the community, you get pulled, like, is there a chance that we could always go back down based on, like, strong feedback given?
Yeah, I mean, if we're not polling above, like, at least above 55% in support, and it's because of a price sensitivity issue, then I think it would be incumbent upon us to consider a lower amount and re-poll.
Yeah, for me, I just feel like it would be easier to go down than to go up, right? So that's just the first thing that came to mind is why not just go for the 430 and see what the feedback is, because at least they get all that information and then they can see, well, if we did go down, here's everything that's going to be cut, right? And then versus like, here's all the possibilities you missed out on.
There was another slide.
Yep.
It showed the core. Then if we added back, there was a big reference that red flag for safety. Keep that. If we were to go for the 430, would that include, is that enough for the core and the full scope?
Yep, it's enough for the core and the full scope, and then instead of $22.5 million, these bolt-ons would be about $50 million. There would be 3 options at $50 million, which would make them more variable. $22 million sounds like a lot, but it doesn't necessarily pay for a lot of projects.
So what I was really thinking was, I know how important panic alert systems are to staff members, so I would not want us to drop that. Safety and security, I would hope that that's not just buildings, that's also staff, meaning teachers in their rooms. I'm not sure that that's praying that it's that as well.
A panic alert system would be a wearable device for everyone.
That's what I wanted to hear. So, if you were
a lot of support for adding this back.
Yes.
So, unless I hear something radically different from you all tonight, moving forward, you will not see this division anymore. You will only see the combo that becomes the core. Yes.
Thank you for preparing so much detail, because for those of us who are not attending the Bond Development Committee meetings, and thank you to the board members who are, really appreciate having the representation there, but this detail is really, really helpful. But I just agree totally with Nancy that that seeing those 2 columns married once again feels like really the right choice, and also that we're really being true to the community in what we're hearing and probably will continue to hear over the next year as we're trying to, promote this for voters, that we're prioritizing, building, basic foundational safety, but also, panic alert type safety, and also bearing in mind things like kitchens and food, because that has become such an incredibly hot topic on a nationwide scale, and being able to take care of our kids just feels really, really important. So thank you for calling that out.
And I'll just say too, it feels really balanced. I feel like it really does paint a good, full picture of how when all of this is done and everything, right, everyone's benefiting, every department, students, staff, families. So I think when you put it all together, it really does feel balanced.
I waited, like you said.
I know, thank you.
Well, I have a ton of questions. I feel like that disclaimer was specifically for me. That's fair. I have a ton of questions now. Just waiting. And I'm the only board member left from 2017, right? I think that's right?
Yes.
Yeah. Although Erica's
She's on the...
grateful that she's going to be one of the people leading the effort along with Mayor. Mayor is the only thing mayor now.
Yeah, I think you're always mayor.
I'd say mayor.
So, top, you don't have to change slides or whatever. When we did it in 2017, built 3 new buildings, we were growing, expected. Couldn't have been more wrong, right? So in 2017, we got that wrong because now we're declining. So what makes us think that this prediction of what's going to happen is more accurate?
Well, this one isn't really based on projections, almost to a fault. It's really based on existing need. So we're not, I guess the exception to that would be things that are a little bit lower in the priority level, like each high school wanting a standalone gym. That would be a little bit based on projection. But the needs for roofing and HVAC and all those things, those are needs that we have right now. Kitchens that you can't even use the warmer things because they don't work anymore, and the freezer door freezes shut, and you have to those things, those are needs that exist. So I would say, yeah, those new buildings, that was based on trends and projection, and these projects are really just based on what we're seeing right now.
I generated a couple new questions now from that, but so that ODE, so the freezer doors that close and warmers that don't work, that's part of the walkthrough, I'm guessing. We had the ODE evaluation, did they come here?
Yeah.
Is that a thing we have to pay for?
Yeah, they were assessing every single district in Oregon, and we asked them to assess us early on because we knew we were going to be going out for a bond.
Okay.
So they stepped into every school, they assessed bleachers, fields, kitchens, roofs, fire panels, everything.
All right, cool. Let me do one more, then you can go back in. Get one more on my list. How many can you characterize? Is there common themes amongst? So the 617 number sounds roughly similar to what our top of the funnel was in 2017. Frankly, I think it was 650. So how many of the projects in the 617 are things that we wanted in 2017 and couldn't do? And if there are any or whatever, would you characterize those as now they are critical because we didn't do them in 2017, or are they still nice to have items that we just couldn't get to in 2017?
Ada can probably answer that best. I would guess that a lot of our level 4 buildings and systems things are probably what were maybe a level 3 or a level 2 in 2017, and now they are the level 4s.
We're just kicking the can down the road because we did have 3 buildings, 3 schools to build, right. And so they were a lower priority, and now they top priority. Things that we desperately need to do, and some of our systems are approaching failure.
Yeah. And there are some expenditures that I'm kind of surprised are in the second column here, like replacing all the Chromebooks. Guessing that's kind of what the technology thing is. We used bond money last time, COVID-ish, to sort of get to one-to-one. So that feels like an inevitable expenditure. If we don't pay for use that bond dollars for that, we're paying general fund dollars for that because it's going to have to happen. Something like flooring in the admin center for $827,000 feels like that's not a level 4 when it could happen, might not happen, but it's level 4 on here. So like, how are we balancing the things that are level 4, replace this carpet? Feels to me like that's the thing we would do if we really had a chance, but like we're going to have to replace all the Chromebooks.
So as far as, we have flooring throughout the matrix, and we consider an upgrade of the flooring at the admin center at level 4. We've received a number of complaints, not only from people coming into the district office, but those working here. The building is over 20 years old, and our hope is to remove the carpeting and go to concrete. There's also, it's less expensive. It also addresses allergy issues with carpeting that many people have. But just like the district office, we also have schools that need upgrading in flooring. And if we don't do it now, we're looking at 12 years from now.
Also, Mark, just add to that, the converse is true too. I know since the start of the school year, I've had 3 equipment failures that have hit our $50,000 deductible. So that's $150,000 out of my general fund for things that are maintenance issues because they're old and need replaced. So there's no question when I've looked at the list that I see a bunch of things that we're covering today because we have to kind of patch them that should, with the bond, and we get the new equipment and actually help us reduce some of our operating costs in the general fund just because there'll be new equipment and we won't have to do the patches as much.
I was just going to provide a community context, which is that the Hillsboro Public Library is going to be doing their Hillsboro Reads event in March, where they recommend that everybody read a book, and they bring a speaker in, and the book that they selected is Tilt, which is about the big Cascadia quake. And so that put me in mind when Saidi was talking about the buildings and systems, and I mean, I feel like that's, it's a contextual opportunity for us that already, the Oregonian did their series on seismic upgrades for the metro region, and so that was a big thing throughout the late summer and fall, and so this feels also like it's going to be in the forefront of people's minds, and the fact that we are proactively addressing it with our bond, this just feels like an opportunity for us to be able to show people that we're really responsive to what is top of mind.
A question. I appreciate your many questions because it actually spurred on a question of my own. How prescriptive do we need to be when we're going out to the public about what we're going to be doing with the bond dollars? Because, for example, if we're basing this all on our current needs, if, let's say, halfway through kind of our projects, we realize enrollment's gone up, we need to, I don't know, likely, unlikely, but build another school, I don't know, something drastic changes to where are we able to have a bit of autonomy to change how we use those bond dollars if they weren't necessarily on when we were on the ballot? How prescriptive do we need to be about what we will actually be doing with the bond dollars?
Yeah. Typically there's, you have to make sure that whatever you spend the money on is addressed, at least categorically, in the bond, in the ballot language. But that's why the ballot language is written in terms that are like renovation and, there's just terms used that would allow some flexibility that would encompass all the types of projects that we would be doing. It might be it would certainly be a stretch to all of a sudden, oh, well, now we didn't tell you we were building a new school, but we are.
Right.
We could definitely, I think, do some renovations that would maybe add a classroom or two that could fit within whatever we're going to put in that ballot title. So
there's no, just to be clear, we would not be able to build a new school with the bond.
That was an extreme example.
Yeah. But I understand where.
But I was looking at like the bolt-on projects, for example. If we weren't able to get to some of the bolt-on projects because, let's say, in the core, it went
over budget.
Right. Okay.
No, we're okay. And also, obviously, the hope is that when you sell the bonds, you're generating bond interest, and that you actually are generating more dollars than would come through in the initial calculations, and that's why you have kind of a prioritized list of, if we can get to them, those things are coming up off the list, and those things might change based on the actual on-the-ground realities over the course of the bond. So we would have that flexibility.
Thank you.
Dovetail with them and try to keep the same theme then. The overlapping Venn diagram picture, the purple one is community interests. How are we measuring what we think the community?
Well, that's what we're going to find out when we take these packages out to the community and get their feedback. So I think it's hard because, we are a public institution and obviously we serve the people, but we are people hired to kind of do things on behalf of, and, we have folks that have expertise in different areas, and so we do rely on that expertise and their interface with these systems every single day to provide kind of some educated information about what those needs are. Of course, we're open to community feedback as well, but it's kind of, probably 80% what we're putting together for them, and then 20% people's desires and feedback, and then we try to marry the two to come up with something mutually acceptable for everyone. The confusion of the number thing, the Intel property coming in, the tax changing, that's done though, right? Like it's not continuing for more. The mushiness of where we are, it feels like we should know the number, or it should be more easy to guess, if we do nothing, how much taxpayers save. If we didn't go out for a bond?
Yeah, if we just let it.
58 per thousand.
So that's not confusing then. Like you were talking about how it's unclear how much would be generated or whatever by the various numbers, and why there's confusion over the numbers or whatever, but there really isn't that. It's 158.
I think she was just referring to the fact that pre the Intel SIP, we had a set of numbers. There's been a couple different looks at cuts at numbers depending on which level of projects we want to fund. And so that's just generated some different numbers to achieve those goals. We're not confused on the calculation. I think
the number is 150.
Actually, I'm not telling you the right answer. Next year, the collection will be 158. If we did nothing, it would go down to, I think, 91 cents per thousand, I think.
Okay.
I would have to look at the numbers again. So that's the difference. Do you only use the difference between 158 and 191? Well, that gets you the 311 number. But again, that's such a difference from our experience. If we look at some averages, we are able to get up to what was closer to, when I started planning this a year ago, we were looking at $1.97 because that was where we were at. And then all of a sudden we went, phew.
311 is closer to the number I expected when we first started talking about if we could do another replacement bond. So the fact that we're more than the 20, I vividly remember before this board was here, us talking about if we went again, we shouldn't expect 458 or whatever the last one was, 408, but then the 50 premium. We shouldn't expect that. It's going to be lower. It's going to be lower. And now we're talking about two numbers that are higher. Right? So
our assessed value has grown a lot.
Our assessed value, in part because of the change in the Intel taxing structure, which is why everybody, when you got your property tax thing in November, you might have been a little surprised, like, oh, how about that? At least I was. But go to 181, go to 191, go to 197, that's not replacement anymore. That's getting closer to where you were 5, 6 years ago before the Intel thing happened. But the Intel thing has happened, and that will be the number going forward for the next 20 years, right?
Depends on the lens you're looking at. Are we talking about the assessed value rate that a taxpayer will see per $1,000 and how that's been? Because the Intel thing doesn't really affect that. What the Intel thing affects is the total amount collected, right? Yeah. So that's why that's jumped so much, because suddenly there's $7 billion of assessed value that didn't exist. It's now getting taxed at either $1.97 or whatever we end up selecting on. That's what's creating that jump from 380 to 450 or whatever, right? So, yeah. But to the taxpayer, right? If I were sitting in Hillsboro, my rate might look kind of continuous, depending on which rate number we end up on, even though the school district has seen a lot more bond proceeds come in because of that extra $7 billion that came on the tax roll. So it kind of depends on what number we solve for.
But like if you were expecting a big increase in your property taxes this November from last November, that probably didn't happen.
No, most likely you're held by Measure 50 has kept you at about 3%. I mean, that's going to be true for most people. Yeah. Unless you construct, there's a few exceptions, but generally that's true.
I'm going to break into your question, Mark. I have some reservation about, I trust you all to handle the subject of Intel very carefully. I have some sensitivities, and I am not the only one in this community when we drop that name. There have been many things going on with that company that are not positive for our community. So I just want to make sure that somebody's making sure that they're really intentional about if we have to actually use the name or talk about that money, because they are leaving, they're downsizing, then they're growing, and then we don't know what's going on, and sometimes they have an investment, sometimes they don't. And every time you turn around, I know who works for Intel because they're leaving our community. We see that. So I just want to make sure that we're being very, very careful about how we throw out a benefit that we may be deriving from Intel at a time where our community is really, really being impacted by their presence and by the volatility of their presence. That's all.
I think all of this background is useful for the board and for our BDC. I think once it comes time to go out and start talking to the community, we'll be talking about, this bond would keep your tax rates roughly consistent with what the average of what they've been since the last time we went and asked you. But I think Travis wanted to add something close.
Mark, I thought you asked a good question last time we were talking about this, about the term renewal or replacement. And we asked Jeremy in the last meeting, Jeremy, right? And he said that folks at the state and lawyers are asking folks going after bonds to not use the term renewal because there's no such thing really. And so even if we looked at like a continuation of last year's rate moving forward and it's 311, we wouldn't call it a renewal or a replacement. And then if we go up to 197, then we wouldn't characterize it there either. And I think we have some words missing in order to get to what we call that. And like Beth said, an average since our last bond might be the rate that we described, if that's the 6-year look back. So that was a good, like when it came up, I thought of your question because we need to get the words right so as to not mischaracterize the bond, but also to let people know that we're not going up beyond what we asked folks to approve last time. And in fact, it's lower than what we were asking for last time, but it's a rate over 6 years-ish. I don't have the words yet, but that's what I wanted to share.
11,450 is not less than the actual. It's high.
Why it is. There's a difference between what taxpayers pay and what it allows you to raise based.
But that one's still there.
We're talking about two different things.
Right. You're saying, but and that's what you just did. We're talking about two different things. What we asked people for last time, and what's coming off are two different things. So what we asked them last time, the rate from last time, is higher than what we're proposing this time, but they're two different things. If we do nothing, if people vote no, if we decide not to go for it, or if people vote no, people will pay less property tax.
Right.
And that's, if we go to 1, or we go to 411, or we go to 430, they're going to pay considerably more property tax. And we'll talk about it, whatever, but it makes me very nervous to ask people for a lot more than what they're. I know we have a lot of needs and whatever, but it makes me uncomfortable to ask people to pay a lot more than what they would pay if they vote no.
Well, let me put a pin on this and also say then, you said that this is good feedback as you all prepare to go to the community. That memory will be with the community. Absolutely. So you guys can benefit from that thought process and then prepare to have that conversation. But I also think that we have to be super careful with the wording. Just like Travis said, it's a wordsmithing idea. Are we talking about the same rate? If we are talking about a higher rate, we have to make sure we help them understand. And you guys know how to do that. I know you do. But
and the intel property coming onto the rolls suddenly wasn't sudden. Community leaders decades ago planned for that to happen, right? And they promised people, we're going to give Intel a tax break to come here and generate a ton of jobs, and then they will start paying the property tax on a thing in 2025 or whatever it was, 20. So it's not a sudden thing. It should have been expected, and we knew exactly what was going to happen. People planned it. Because it's happened, that's the new tax rate. So to say we're averaging what you paid for the last 6 years before that thing that we knew was going to happen happened.
It includes what we paid this year. So
sure.
Last year you paid $1.97 a thousand. This year you paid $1.54 a thousand.
Yep.
So we're talking about going back up to $1.97.
Right. Yeah. It's been a long time since somebody in Hillsboro's property tax went down. And that's because the tax breaks extended to Intel decades ago. The bill on that came due.
I guess philosophically is, kind of the position we're in is we're basically asking our community, is about $2 a thousand to pay in property taxes acceptable to you to maintain the, 37 schools and 3 district buildings that we have in the Hillsboro School District to educate students and give you community resources? That's really what we're asking. It's kind of like a cash out refi on your house. We own the house. We want to do a cash out refi because we have this, this opportunity to, take advantage in what would otherwise be a drop in rates. And it's up to us to decide, is it important for us to maintain the investments that our community has already made in the school district, because it's our only mechanism to do so, as opposed to operational funding where there is the opportunity at the state level for them to pay us more. And I think it's interesting to talk about the sensitivity around taxes when we kind of touched on local option last time, which would be an entirely brand new tax that this community has never had. So it's just something to keep in mind as we think about the overall tax burden on taxpayers in the Hillsboro School District attendance area. They have paid roughly this rate for 20 plus years. So is it okay that they continue to do so into the future? That's what we need to decide. That's what we need to decide if we're comfortable asking them.
Thank you, Beth. If you have any other questions.
I'm not done, but she needs to go, and then I got one more question.
Oh, yeah, but we're running out of time just because they also have a long presentation as well. So please, thanks. Just because this one we could talk about for like 2 hours plus. So then our next item is standards-based grading update with David and Becky.
Yep, I will kick us off. I do have, same as Beth, if we could let Becky and David get through it. I did do note cards because I couldn't help myself. Little note cards. If you want to write questions down based on the slides that go by, that's totally fine. So I'm going to have Brooke pass out a few. So if you just want to do like the slide number, and then if we run out of time for that as well, because like the bond, I think this presentation could also run 2 hours if we wanted to. So we are going to try to just give you a quick high-level overview. Hopefully we will have a little time for questions, but again, if you write them down and send them, and we'll collect these afterwards, we will put it in a board update on Friday for you. All right. So we are going to, I brought Becky and David with me as well. Everybody has met them. Executive Director of Schools oversees all of our high schools, HOA and Oak Street campus. Becky Kingsmith, Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning, and all things secondary schools knowledgeable. So just quickly, hopping into standards-based grading. I don't know if that's...
You want to do one quick for me?
So we wanted to just give you a little overview of this. It came up as a question that came from one of you, and we are going to just share with all of you. So this conversation around standards-based grading has been around, I would say since the dawn of time, but definitely since pre-pandemic times. Obviously, when the pandemic happened, we were having conversations about this prior to that, but when the pandemic occurred, obviously those things were set aside and we had bigger things to focus on during that time. So as we have come farther and farther away from the pandemic, we have brought this conversation back, and Becky will review a little bit of a timeline for you around that. But this is not something new. It has been a conversation that has existed out there. Standards-based grading is just, again, a different way of evaluating students' learning that really focuses on what students know and can do around specific learning targets. In this case, in HSD, we call those course outcomes. Students still continue to get an overall grade for a course, but they receive some scores through a rubric on skills and concepts, and those are mapped to our standards, national and state standards. And again, this approach kind of provides a clear picture for students' strengths and then the areas where, or the standards that they might not be as successful at. So this is a change in grading. If you think back for many folks, maybe when you went to school, there was a way in which everything was graded, and that one stood the test of time for a long time, and it might not have been the best way to grade. So as we are having conversations with folks, it's a change. So we are not in a full implementation mode right now. We are really working on piloting and creating demand for it. So it's a change process. And for sometimes people, change is hard, but we're also trying to do what we can to support as we work more forward in implementation. So just again, wanted to give you kind of just an overview of that starting point, and then I'm going to kick it over to Becky and David to talk a little bit more in depth about what we're doing for our high school.
Thank you, Andrea. So as this mentions here, standards-based grading is reporting on specific learning targets that are connected to skills and concepts, and we call those course outcomes in HSD. So course outcomes are concise statements that describe the most essential knowledge and skills that a student must demonstrate proficiency for each course. So in Hillsboro School District, we call those course outcomes. In other districts, they might use other words, but when you hear us talk about it here in HSD, we're gonna use the term course outcomes. In Hillsboro School District, these were created collaboratively by teams of teachers from all of our comprehensive high schools, as well as HOA and Oak Street campus. And it involves taking our state standards and national standards that we as teachers already are responsible for providing teaching and learning in our classrooms to our students, and condensing those down into clear, manageable statements. So it provides a much clearer picture for students and for families about their teaching and learning, as well as identifying ways that we can support students. So as an example of that, as I was a people and politics U.S. government teacher in Hillsboro School District before moving to the district office, and I maybe had 25 standards that I was responsible for teaching over the course of that semester-long class. And so what our people and politics educators did was looked at those 25 standards and identified about 5 course outcomes that they could condense those down into based on general themes that they see across those standards. So in Hillsboro School District, our high school classes have anywhere, I think the least number of course outcomes a course has for a semester-long class is 2. And I think the most course outcomes a class has is like in the mid-teens. I would say it's average to have about 5-ish course outcomes is kind of the average if I had to pick a number. But really it depends on course to course and the number of standards that course has connected to it. Key principles of standards-based grading really come based on 4 major principles, and that's connected to some of the research that I'll share with you here in a moment as well. So the first one is a focus on learning. So
The primary goal is to measure students' understanding of the essential learning standards. So it's not about behavior, it's not about effort, and it's not about homework completion. It's really about this is the expectation, this is the learning target, and this is how you're performing on that learning target. The other thing is clear expectations. So parents, students, and our teachers all know exactly what is expected of students. So it's letting them know transparently, this is what I expect you to learn by the end of the course. So learning standards, these outcomes, they're specific statements that outline what a student should be able to know and do. Multiple attempts. Students are often given multiple opportunities to show their understanding and to improve those scores. So the idea is that you don't just have one opportunity to demonstrate your understanding on a course outcome, but multiple opportunities throughout the semester and throughout the year of the course. So this encourages learning from your mistakes and showing growth, that we want that growth mindset. We want students to improve. Instead of saying, can I retake the test, it's rather, do I have another opportunity to demonstrate my proficiency in this skill? And then also, the last one is the separation of academic and non-academic factors. So grades on report cards ideally should reflect academic achievement. Other factors like effort, like participation, like responsibility, we're not saying those are not important skills to teach in our classrooms, but we're saying that those should be shared with families, should be shared with students in a different way than their academic grades, because those are things that are tied directly to standards. So I mentioned some of the research that we've used to support this conversation on standards-based grading. So these are the key researchers, educational researchers that we looked to guide this work. I would say the one on the top is the one that we reference back to the most. This is Grading for Equity by Joe Feldman. He's often quoted in grading conversations in educational articles, educational journals. This is the framework that many districts across the nation have used in order to approach standards-based grading, but I think it's also important to mention some others, like Ken O'Connor. The first I was ever exposed to was The Case Against the Zero by Douglas Reeves, probably about 15 years ago. And then also Thomas Gutsky is another leader in the conversations around grading for standards-based grading. As Audrey alluded to, I wanted to share just a little bit of this timeline. Now, I had to be reasonable in my start date here, but I've been in the district since 2007. I easily could have started this timeline at 2007. I wanted to start it here and really where we re-picked up this conversation in 2021, 2022, which was the year that we returned to in-person learning after being in comprehensive distance learning for a year. The reason why this is an important year for us to pick up and start this conversation again is because we learned a lot about ways that students can demonstrate their understanding and their learning during the pandemic. Our traditional way of grading up until 2020 really hadn't changed in multiple decades. The pandemic forced us to change. And in some ways it was really hard, but in some ways we learned a lot about the multitude of ways that students can demonstrate their understanding and thinking that maybe we had never explored before. And as a result, the way that we grade students and the way that we report their understanding needed to change as well. And so we started by, SLC up here stands for Secondary Leadership Collaboration. It is a group of educators that represents all of our high schools, including Oak Street Campus and HOA. They each bring about 5 teacher leaders and then their principal as well. And this is where we do our major learning throughout the year. We meet 3 times throughout the year. And so we started that year, 21-22. We have met 3 times, and we really focused on an equitable grading book study, which was that Joe Feldman book that I mentioned in the earlier slide. 22-23 school year, the high schools came together, the high school principals, admin teams came together and worked with teams of teachers in order to revise our grading agreements and have equidistant grading scales at all of our high schools. Now at that point, not all of our high schools were aligned in what that equidistant grading scale was. So for instance, we had a 10-point scale at one of our schools, a 5-point scale at one of our schools, and then our remaining schools used a 4-point scale. So different students were experiencing different scales at different schools. However, all of those scales had equidistant grading, meaning that the quantity of an F to a D, to a C, to a B, to an A were all the same, versus maybe the grading you were exposed to, at least I was exposed to growing up, was an F constituted 0 to 59%, and then everything else was 10% increments. So it made it that if you had an F, it was very hard to ever recover from that. It didn't encourage growth. It didn't encourage learning from mistakes, and it was very, very hard for students to recover from. It was not balanced. Then in 23-24, I mentioned those course outcomes. Our professional learning communities in our schools began to collaborate together to look at their standards and start to condense those down into course outcomes. So that was done at each local individual building level. Those teacher teams then set representatives during the 24-25 school year to meetings and collaborations that we hosted. We probably hosted like 20 or 25 of these last year. We used a lot of our collaboration time at the high school level for creating these course outcomes. So this looks like social studies teachers from all of our high schools coming together to say, this is what we think the course outcomes for U.S. history should be, for people in politics, for economics, so that then the course outcomes for economics at Blanco High School were identical to the course outcomes at Hill High, Liberty, Century, Oak Street, HOA. So we then, this past summer, did the process of loading those into Synergy. So when teachers went into their grade books this year, I'm an econ teacher, those economic course outcomes were automatically loaded into the Synergy grade book for all those educators. So they didn't have to do any of that legwork themselves. Also, this last spring and summer, we collaborated with our union partners at HEA to come to agreements in regards to what the rubrics would look like, what the support system would look like for our teacher, and we planned out what this year would look like, as well as moving forward some of our agreements so that we were in partnership with our union partners moving forward. And then that leads us to this year, which is the piloting of our standards-based grade book, and that is happening currently in our schools, and emphasizing that it is a pilot, so not every teacher is doing it. And then the professional development and support that we're providing right now in schools is around the rubric development attached to those course outcomes and evaluating assessment practices and what needs to change versus what can consistently stay the same. So just a little deeper into what that piloting looks like for this year. Our high school educators had 100% choice. No one was forced to do a standards-based grade book this year. And so this was an option that teachers could opt into, and they could opt in either at the beginning of the year, or also some of our teachers might jump on at the semester, and because some people kind of want to see it and feel it out a little bit, and then would be able to come in for semester 2. The only change that occurred system-wide that everybody did, regardless if you were a piloting teacher or not, is that we did move to a unified scale across our district. So remember I said that we had different scales at different high schools. So at the beginning of this year, all of our high schools did move to a 0 to 4 scale. We did, so of that option of piloting, we have about 200 high school educators that did opt into piloting. To give you an idea, we have about 360 high school educators. So that's a good chunk of our high school educators that did opt into piloting this year. And then this piloting process is going to be really helpful for us to inform the process of what this will look like moving forward. What has worked? What has not worked? What is it that we need to tweak? What is it we need to stay consistent with moving forward? So just a comparison of what the experience might be for a student or for our teachers if you're a piloting teacher versus you're a non-piloting teacher. So our piloting teachers using that 0 to 4 scale, that's the same thing for our non-piloting teachers. For a piloting teacher, scores are entered in the grade book based on the course outcome. So course outcome 1 has a specific skill. This is a student earns either a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 on the course outcome. In a non-piloting teacher's classroom, scores are entered in the grade book generally specific to the assessment. So on this test, you earned a 4, and that test might include a few different course outcomes. piloting teachers got to choose between two different calculations, aggregations of the course outcomes. David will go into more of what that means here in a minute. They got to choose either growth over time or mean, so there was teacher choice in that. And then for a piloting teacher, only summative scores count towards the final grade. So summative generally means that this is an accurate representation of what a student has learned during a period of teaching and learning time. So I have a general expectation for you to demonstrate a certain level of proficiency after a time period of learning. In a non-piloting classroom, while most of the grade book is weighted heavier towards that summative, there is also formative assessments going in the grade book. Formative is more that practice work. But I don't necessarily expect you to be fully proficient yet. We're still working out the kinks. We're still providing instruction. We're still giving feedback. So that's what formative work represents. And then similar in both of these, piloting teachers and non-piloting teachers, students receive letter grades on their report card like always.
Great. I'm going to pick it up for the next 6 slides, and the next 6 slides build on each other. So I'm going to go through and share the aggregation methods and how a grade is determined. This is a great opportunity to take notes if you want to take notes. And so, because you might be thinking, like, how is letter grade given and how is the transcript and what does that final mark look like? Well, I'm going to build to that over time. But the most important thing is the foundation of course outcome work is the rubric. The rubric does not align to the final grade. The rubric aligns to the task at hand, the ask of the student, the summative assessment. And I have some tables in a couple minutes to show you. But the rubric aligns to the work that the student is doing to give feedback to the student, show the student what they're doing, what they're not doing, and where they're at in terms of their learning cycle. We settled on a 4-point scale pretty early in our process. After I came to HSD in 23-24, which was my first year in HSD, we began having conversations about where do we want to land in terms of the rubric alignment. 4-point scale, do we want to include a 0? Do we not want to include a 0? But we landed here pretty early. We fine-tuned our language over time, and we landed with language that mirrors the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is NAEP, which is already a standardized test that students take across the country. So we mirrored the language that educators use in the 4 cores of writing, math, science, and social studies to identify our course outcome-based rubrics. So the title of the rubric is course outcome-based rubric, not a final grade. I'll explain how that aggregates in a moment here. Oh, I went too far. A little delay. I wanted to give everyone an example of what a standard-based grading assignment looks like versus a traditional grading assignment. So if we all think back to our own educational experience and the students in the room, thank you for being here as a representative. It's really, really appreciated. And I hope you can join me on Thursday for the student test. But we wanted to be able to share what it looks like. The assessment looks different. Back when we were students, when I was a student, back in the 80s, yes, I'm that old, it was pretty much a list of questions that answered, and a point value was assigned to that question, either 1 point or multiple points based upon the value of the question. In a standards-based grading assessment or task, an activity, questions are clustered. They're clustered together based upon course outcome. This is a math assessment given in one of our high schools. In the left-hand box, you'll see the left-hand side of the screen, there's a course outcome number 3 in our data reasoning class that all of our freshmen and sophomores are taking. This course outcome identifies the questions 1 through 4. So as a student is completing questions 1 through 4, they're giving evidence of their knowledge based upon that course outcome. And then the teacher can mark the test based upon the 4-point scale that aligns to that group. I also included course outcome 1 on the right-hand side. Course outcome 1 were questions 7 through 10 on this assessment. And so those questions specifically give evidence to the teacher of the student knowledge and also allows the student to see where they are in learning that skill or that expectation or course outcome of the class. I omitted course outcome 2 in the middle just because of size of screen. But this assessment had 3 course outcomes that were being assessed. So when the teacher went to put the course outcomes in a grade book, there would be 3 different marks given based upon the course outcome. Course outcome 1, course outcome 2, or course outcome 3. And so what does that look like as we begin to aggregate a grade? I have 2 screens that are back to back. One is mean, and the next one that we're going to look at is grading over time, or growth over time, excuse me. So starting with the top row, you'll see in the top row that we have 5 different tasks that this teacher assigned. We have a worksheet that the students completed, they took a quiz, they had a unit assessment, then they moved into a project, followed by a Socratic seminar, which is a circle activity that many, many classrooms do. And for example, course outcome 1, which is the second row down, had 3 opportunities to show evidence of learning over the course of the grading period. I purely made this up. I just put numbers in and then did the math. Well, I had help with the math, so I taught social studies. But course outcome 1 had 3 examples put in. Course outcome 2 had 3 tasks. Course outcome 3 had 3 different opportunities. As you can see, course outcome 4 had 4 opportunities. In course outcome 4, the student received a 2 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 over the course of that grading period. And then if you look at the right column where it says mean, if you were to take each course outcome, remember those course outcome marks are based upon the rubric that is given to the student that the teacher creates to show evidence. That average, or that mean average was a 3.33, and then down to 3.0, 3.67. In the course, that student received a 2.96. In Synergy, at the end of the grading period, the final grade is only done through a mean. The average is the only tool that the student information gives us. We can't change that part, okay? But the other part we can manipulate. So this is an example of a mean. Pretty traditional, based upon course outcomes. One thing to point out here is that a 3 does not mean a B. A 4 does not mean an A. It means that if a student received a 3, on the rubric, they were at the proficient level within the rubric as defined by 3. If they were at a 4, they were an exemplary level, and they demonstrated evidence beyond the proficient level of a 3. It does not equate to an A, B, C, D, F, okay, or an incomplete. So this is a mean average, and I'll get to that 2.96 here in a moment. Okay. If we go to growth over time, here's an example. Same exact marks that a student received on the different assessments or the different tasks that the teacher asked the student to do. So once again, you can see in the top, worksheet, quiz, assessment unit 1, project, Socratic seminar. Of course, outcomes are listed on the left with the same marks from the prior screen, except for this example of growth over time. Growth over time is a decaying average of the most recent work that a student produces is weighted more. So it's weighted at a 60 to 40% more. So the more recent work a student does in that course outcome is going to be the mark that they earn. It's going to impact the grade. That does not mean that if a teacher does course outcome 1 in September and course outcome 4 in January, that course outcome 4 has more weight. It means that as evidence is accumulated in course outcome 4, it will impact course outcome 4. But course outcome 1, even though if it was done earlier in the semester, is still going to be only assessed based upon the evidence in that course outcome. So going back to the screen, you can see the growth over time. The numerical value might look a little different. In this case, from the marks that this fictitious student earned, it would be a 3.11. That 3.11, you would say, is higher than the 2.96. It is, except for when you look at the band of grades, the equidistant grading, which I'll get to in a moment. I'll come back to that. So how do we get to a letter grade? The way we get to a letter grade is the course outcomes are simply when they're averaged together with the mean, produced a mark with growth over time, and then averaged together. And because we made an agreement in 2022-23 that we have equidistant grading, we have balanced grading, we have a 0.8 differential between an A, B, C, D, F, or I. An important point here, this does not equate to a transcript. A transcript that we have traditionally had looks the same. So the 4-point scale that we use for a transcript to get the 4.0 to an A or a 3.0 to a B still exists. The reason we have to have that transcript is because of post-high school experiences that our kids have to take, either through trade school, military, or university. So it still exists. We didn't lower the expectation for the 4-point scale. The way the math works to get a letter grade is in a standards basis. Because if we have an A, E, C, E, F, we have a 5. Here we have a 4-point scale. To divide 4 into 5, it's 0.8 differential. That's how that 0.8 was created. Keep that thought. Going to the next slide. Now we take the last 3 slides and put it together. Left-hand column, we have the course outcomes. The next column, we have the mean at the 2.96. Following column over, we have growth over time, 3.11. You take 2.96 or 3.11 and you put them in the distribution of the letter grade, that gets us a B. Both students, or both examples earn a B for the student. So the final grade is defined by the evidence collected of the courses. And back to Victor, before we get to
All right, so just to take us, how have we supported the understanding of this with all of our participants that would need to and want to know? So for our students, we provided information in their course syllabus at the beginning of the year, as well as their Google Classroom, as utilized by teachers. We provided some draft language that teachers could utilize for if they were piloting teachers or non-piloting teachers. We had advisory lessons in September. The September's lessons informed students of the pilot, the scale and rubric that would be using this year, how to identify if they were in piloting or non-piloting classroom, and how grades were calculated. Our November advisory lesson, because by that point in time it was quarter 1 grading, and so they had kind of a grading period there. We then spent time with students looking at how they could check their grades, how they could find what their course outcomes were for the course, and then how to advocate and goal set based on the grades that they currently have. Then we also have a student focus group on course outcomes and grading that's meeting about 4 or 5 times throughout the school year to give us input and feedback. So it has representatives from all of our comprehensive high schools, as well as Oak Street campus and HOA. For our staff, in collaboration again with our union partners, we agreed on 4 sessions that were available last summer. Teachers could opt to attend none, 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of these sessions. Heading into next summer, as we decide how we want to implement standards-based grading moving into next year, we're going to make 6 sessions available to teachers. And again, you can access any between 0 and 6 if you are a high school educator. We also this year have dedicated 4 of our principal-directed academic seminars, as well as 2 of our professional development days in October and November for the learning collaboration and work time on those grades, rubrics, and the assessment work for this year. And then we also have 4 listening sessions that are specific to our course outcome weeks, 1 per quarter. We've already had 2 this year. And then finally, our family support and understanding. In August, we launched our web page connected to the HSC website that has an overview of our grading this year. It also has an FAQ section. We provided, and our principals have provided information in their school bus newsletters to their families. And then finally, we provided for conferences a handout that all of our schools could use that had an explanation of what standards-based grading looked like and how they could identify whether their student was in a piloting or non-piloting classroom. And that brings us to questions.
So I have a lot of questions later, but basically, so because of this new grading scale, it's going to be a lot of emphasis on summative assignments, which to my understanding are tests and exams, correct?
No, that does not have to be defined as just tests here. You'll notice the example that David had up there of a grade book, that it could be projects, it could be Socratic seminars, it could be whatever the teacher has determined that is a valid point of a student to demonstrate their proficiency and understanding of that course and outcome. So the expectation would be we've had enough learning up to this point in time where I would expect you to be able to demonstrate some level of proficiency. So it doesn't have to be just an exam or a test.
Thank
you. I do think piloting is really important because I think that is what our teachers are, the feedback I have heard from our educators is that they're working through how to identify maybe how I used to label things summative and formative and how I want to move forward in identifying those. So I think we're definitely in a learning process.
The worry with this is the overemphasis on things like final exams and exams in total. For as a student who has struggled with like having testing studies, professionally in classes, using the presentation and just motivation to do assignments and just learn about the concrete like the things that there to offer. Exams are definitely not a way that I feel are a valid way to just assess students' skill on these concepts. I do fear that there is a lot of you mentioned that there was student groups. How many have met so far?
We've had one meeting in October, mid-October, and our next one is Thursday. And I think all three of you should have gotten an invite from me to join. And we'll meet again in January, end of February. So an opportunity for us to learn from students their experience. The first time we met, there were questions around the aggregation method, how is an A defined, your question around summative assessments, what does that look like? We answered questions around misinformation and helping the task force understand, and then we asked for feedback, like what do students need for us to be able to help them through the educator support them.
Into grade levels in there, or is it just seniors who won't be subjected to this? Do we have some
ninth graders,
sophomores and juniors?
I asked for 10 to 11 the high school experience to talk about high school assessment, high school grading.
I also have a question. What is the process of drafting the course outcomes? Like, how are educators involved in that process?
Yeah, so I said the year before, teachers worked in their professional learning communities, which are basically all of the physics teachers at like a certain school work together. And so all the physics teachers at all of our high schools and then Oak Street and HOA came together at a day that we had a full day where they worked here at the AC, facilitated by instructional coaches and our teachers on special assignment to help them through the process of taking their individual work, collaborating, consolidating that work, and identifying the course outcomes that they would use for this school year. So that was 100% teacher created. Well, there was the one day that they did the collaboration of the work that they had already brought to the table from the work they did for the whole previous year as a professional learning community.
I have a question. So you mentioned a lot about students having other opportunities to demonstrate their learning or having multiple.
So if you remember back to the chart that we had up there, there showed that like course outcome 1 had 3 different attempts at it, that course outcome 2 had 4 different opportunities. So that could be a way. It also could be that there are some retakes or some reassessments or some test corrections. So it's a both and.
Okay, sorry. I see equity issues in this. Let me explain what I see. What I see is in physics, if there's 4 teachers, or, well, I guess that would, okay, let's take one where there's a bunch of teachers. English. Well, what if all the English teachers decide that they don't want to give the breadth of ways for students to demonstrate that proficiency? And what I'm worried about is the teacher that says, you're going to do it this way and this way, and these are your 2 choices, and that's it. And then another teacher says, well, hey, I know I have a pretty diverse class, so I'm going to give them 4 or 5 different ways to demonstrate that proficiency. And it's the opportunity to demonstrate the proficiency where the equity is then lost because they don't do it the same way. And that's what I was picking up on. What it does is it creates a different level of me being discriminated against, or a child being literally dismissed or discriminated by a teacher who just doesn't have the time, doesn't feel like doing 5 different ways of grading. Does that make sense? Because I like this idea of what you're, in theory, it sounds great, but I just see that ripe for teachers to say, well, you know, this is my special class and they're going to get 5 different ways to prove it to me, but this is a class that gets on my nerves and I really don't have the time. So they're going to get 2 ways.
I think in our schools, we have PLCs where those teachers work together with one another, and they do need to come to an agreement of how they are going to do this moving forward. Because if 2 teachers are having a drastically different way of doing that, that's a conversation that the administrator would need to have. And again, I think what this is bringing teachers together to get aligned in what they're teaching, they're expecting their students to be able to do in the course outcome work, and being aligned in how they're going to choose to look at it summatively, either through assessments, through quizzes, through projects, through seminars, through a variety of methods, and having that agreement. What I see coming from this as having a child in high school is a little bit more of a common experience between teachers. So the grade 12 teacher for language arts, this one and this one, I see more common experiences for kids. Teachers definitely have their own flair, for sure, in how they address those, and how they present and that sort of thing. But I think what I see is more commonalities coming, because what you're talking about, Nancy, in terms of what teachers want to do, also existed in the other way of grading too. So what we're trying to do is consistency, right? And that is a work that is definitely something that takes time, conversation, because you can bring all of the teachers together, and we are going to have teachers that will feel passionate about one way of doing things. And what we're trying to do is if we have 10 teachers in a room, we want most of them to be in agreement. And sometimes we always have one that's not. And we're trying to work through those conversations this year and last year to make sure that we're trying to be more aligned and have a better experience for our students across our district. So if I go to Glencoe and if I go to Hill High, I'm not having a different experience in those. We're trying for more alignment and consistency. That is the biggest thing. That is the root of some of the equity work that needs to happen. Is alignment and consistency in all 4 of our comprehensives, as well as our online and our alternatives. And I don't know if you want to add.
I do. I think really quickly that one of our talking points from day one has been enough evidence. Teaching have enough evidence in their grade book so that they can have professional judgment to assess the student's knowledge on the subject. So we've been identifying what does that look like. It's got to be enough evidence across the course of the grading period so that the teacher can give a grade based upon the course. One of our fears in standards-based learning is what you say, is that we don't have enough evidence And if we don't have enough evidence to truly assess a student's knowledge, then what we're doing is we're putting a student in the box, which is the same system we have now. So how can we be really thoughtful moving forward to provide that equitable opportunity in a system that has standards and then also has equity?
And I know we need to go downstairs because it's 6:57. And what I'm going to do is ask that everybody just put
I do like a plug of why I really like a teacher perspective, former teacher perspective. Can I just real quick?
Sure. Go quickly.
Okay.
That's in charge.
I just wanted to say, just as a former teacher in elementary, we did standards-based, and of course it's very different. I was also an instructional coach, and some of the benefits that I saw, one of the biggest ones that I excited for, especially in hearing about this in secondary, is this really pushes teachers to become instructional leaders, because it's really pushing them to, instead of focusing on content, to really get to know their students, I feel. And I think oftentimes when we hear summative, we think pen and paper, multiple choice, and that is not the case. Standards-based, actually, I would say it's actually the opposite of what you want. We want teachers to create assessments that are going to get the full picture. It might be that multiple choice in a certain course is what gives you that information, but oftentimes it's not. And so you have to it forces teachers to really get creative and actually teach, like you were saying, that you're more intrinsic, right? Like I like to, hands-on, I want to apply it to real world, I want to do all that. That right there shows that you're mastering the content versus teaching to the test. And I think when done right, I think it creates clarity for students to really understand what they want. And I think that also in turn creates confidence in our teachers. And the more confident that our teachers are on what they're teaching and how mastery looks like, I think the more engagement we get from students. I think it's just new for secondary. I don't think it's new in elementary. That's kind of the way that we've been doing it. But also as an instructional coach, working with teachers, instead of having a conversation of how do we wordsmith this question in a multiple choice to really get that answer, we're not having conversations. We're having conversations about what do they need to practice and how are they going to show it? Maybe it is they need to apply it. Maybe it is that they need to create a presentation, a video or something. But the conversations that are had, I just think are much more instructional leader than they would be on the opposite if it wasn't standards-based. And I wish I had more time, but I just wanted to share that.
Well, we do too. We do too, yes.
We have a few minutes on our next work session to continue discussion. Maybe both of them.
Yeah. And I'm looking to your board. I don't think I make those.
Yes, because this conversation is something we could, again, talk about for a very long time. So if you have any questions for Audria, feel free to email her, and then we can edit our next agenda meeting.
Have your yellow cards. That would be very helpful, because we could also make sure we tailor whatever we bring the next time to whatever might be on those yellow cards or whatever. That would be very helpful.
Recess this meeting at 7:01.
Everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. My agenda. The Hillsboro School District 1J Board of Directors regular session is now in order. We will begin like we always do with a flag salute, which is right behind you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, I will be reading the Hillsboro School District Land Acknowledgement. As we gather here today, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge that our district service area is on the occupied traditional homelands of the Akwality Indigenous Peoples lands we now call Washington County and the state of Oregon. We honor the Indigenous people whose traditional and ancestral homelands we stand on the Tualatin, Kalapuya, Klamath, Clackamas, Tumwater, Malala, bands of the Chinook, and many other indigenous nations of the Columbia River. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their ancestors. We also recognize the urban, indigenous, native, First Peoples community living in the metro area, which includes over 400 tribal nations. The Hillsboro School District is committed to the recognition and educating regarding tribal and local history and working with our local tribes in partnership. Our next is our proclamation tonight is the National Special Education Day proclamation read by Director Jessica Harding Mercado.
The Hillsboro School District recognizes that National Special Education Day commemorates the anniversary of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. Landmark legislation that ensures students experiencing disabilities have access to a free and appropriate public education tailored to their individual needs. The Hillsboro School District is committed to providing an inclusive, equitable, and supportive learning environment in which every student, regardless of ability, can thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. The Hillsboro School District special education teachers, support staff, and administrators are dedicated professionals who work tirelessly to deliver high-quality instruction, individualized services, and compassionate care to students experiencing disabilities. The Hillsboro School District celebrates students experiencing disabilities that enrich our schools with their talents, perspectives, resilience, and leadership, and values their essential contributions to the vibrant and diverse communities that we strive to cultivate. The Board of Directors of the Hillsboro School District do hereby proclaim that Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025 be National Special Education Day. We urge all community members to join us in recognizing the importance of inclusive education and in celebrating the achievements of students experiencing disabilities. Hillsboro School District Board of Directors.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is the approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move that the Board of Directors approve the agenda as printed.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Watson and seconded by Director Thomas to approve the agenda as printed. Is there any discussion? No. Motion carries. Our next item is to approve the consent agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion regarding the consent agenda?
I move that the Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as printed.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Ryan and seconded by Director Watson to approve the consent agenda as printed. Is there any discussion? Motion carries. Our next agenda is audience time. Do we have audience time, Beth? Wonderful. I will go ahead before we get started, read our audience participation statement. As representatives of the community, members of the Board of Directors believe that listening to public input is essential to making wise decisions. So we thank you for taking the time to be here. We consider this your time to speak and our time to listen. So individual board members will not reply directly to you immediately following your comment. If a board member hears something that requires additional attention, they may request it to be added to a future meeting agenda, or the superintendent or his designee may reach out to you directly to connect with you. We are fortunate in the Hillsboro School District to have a collaborative community that can discuss points of disagreement in a respectful manner. With this in mind, rudeness, ridicule, obscene or profane language, impatience, lack of respect for others, and personal attacks are not acceptable. Comments aimed at state and federally protected classes are prohibited. Audience demonstrations supporting or opposing a speaker or idea are not permitted. We welcome frank discussion of district operations and programs, but in public session, the board does not hear comments regarding any individual district staff member. Public participation in board meetings is governed by policy BDDH, public comment of board meetings. There are structured channels for the board to review complaints involving staff members described in board policy KL, public complaints. As you start your remarks, please share your name and if speaking for organization, the name of your organization. We allow up to 3 minutes for each public comment. Please feel free to follow up by an email to the board or the superintendent. And now Beth will call your name.
Yes.
Your turn to speak.
First up is Nicole Williams, followed by Evelyn, and then Sitali. Okay, good evening. Thank you, Board and Superintendent Raymond for hearing us this evening. I am here tonight with many of my colleagues and some of my students to request your asserted action in response to the illegal and unconstitutional activity of ICE. It's no secret that ICE is racially profiling members of our community. They are taking people without warrants, which is illegal. They are detaining them for weeks and even months without due process, which is unconstitutional. Additionally, their tactics are unnecessarily violent, which can be traumatizing to children and adults that witness this behavior. My colleagues and I are hearing from multiple students every week about how they and their families are being impacted by ICE. Students are not able to focus on learning because of this trauma. Students are worried about not having enough food at home because parents have stopped going to work, many times in response to their children's pleading. Several students have told us about a cousin, uncle, friend, or even a parent that has been detained. Mothers have called us asking what they should do about their child not wanting to come to school because they're afraid they will go home to an empty house. We can no longer ignore the negative impact ICE is having on our schools. We have seen attendance plummet since September. We have witnessed more and more students unable to engage in learning due to their fear. Many of our students spend most of their day on their phones, waiting to hear about a friend or family member being detained. I'm aware of the food resources that HSD has organized, as well as the protocols for what to do if ICE tries to enter our campuses. I recently visited the Safe and Welcoming Schools website and saw the resolution that states we will not provide student information to anyone without a warrant. While these resources are important and appreciated, our community needs more from us. We want to work together to provide more support, but we need your action. We need you to create clear protocols and have a defined plan for protecting students when ICE is present near campuses, like safety watches at drop-off and dismissal, like bus alleys along drop-off and pickup routes. We need you to provide staff training on how to report ICE activity and warn others. We need a system for immediate mental health support for students that are impacted by ICE. We need you to declare sanctuary status and create a resolution for HSD to become a sanctuary school district, denouncing illegal ICE activity and standing with our immigrant neighbors. For those of us with white privilege, not speaking up about this issue is unacceptable. We have an obligation to fight for justice for all. This is no longer a political matter. This is a matter of human rights. The more of us that stay silent, the worse it's going to get. I'm not speculating. We can look back at history and we know what comes next. We must be allies, not just convenient supporters. There is a difference. It's time to take a stand and choose a side and stand with our immigrant neighbors once and for all. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Evelyn. I'm an 8th grader at South Meadows Middle School. I'm speaking here tonight because I want you to know how hard it is for us students to live in fear. There are many kids that are scared to go to school because of ICE. Many students are scared for their parents to go to work. They're afraid that they will get detained by ICE and not come home. I'm afraid. My mom is afraid to go out of the house. Many other students feel the same way. We need to create resolutions to show us that you support us. We need to know that you're on our side. I'm just really upset. The luxury of learning from history. Let's not make the same mistake. For the first time of the first they came for the communists, and I didn't speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was a trade unionist. I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Pastor Martin Niemöller, Germany, 1946. For those of you that think my choice of poem is extreme, I do not disagree with you. But what is happening in our country is extreme. The current administration has created conditions for fear and hate to thrive. Our own president breaks the law and violates the Constitution by allowing and promoting racial profiling. illegal detainment without due process. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Thank you for your time. Hello, my name is Ciclali Castro Venegas. I'm an 8th grader at South Meadows Middle School, and I am here asking for you guys to take action. Every day I live in fear, thinking and worrying about if my mom or dad are coming back home. I should not be worrying about this. I'm a kid. I should be focusing on school and doing other teenager stuff. But I can't because I'm constantly checking up on my parents' location. I feel angry that the district has been so quiet about this issue. It has been going on since October, and it feels like you guys are ignoring it. My dad has not been working because he's too scared to go out. Please create a resolution and publish a statement to show us that you care and hear us, because right now we feel ignored. Thank you so much. Any other speakers after that? Yeah.
Evelyn and Ciclali, thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for being brave enough to stand up and tell us what your experience is. And you're right. You should be focused on school and being with your teachers and your friends and your families and not have to worry about all of this. And I want you to know that we are with you. Directors Pantoja, Watson, Ryan, myself have been going to meetings that are happening for elected officials and executive leaders in the community with Centro Cultural and learning about the things that you described that are happening that are illegal. And it's not fair and it's not right. And there are a whole bunch of people working quietly behind the scenes to make sure that we know what our rights are, we know what your rights are, and how to protect each other. And I want you to know that some of that isn't happening in public because we don't want to draw a target on Hillsboro as a place that has a lot of vulnerable people who are vulnerable to the actions that are taking place. And I'm happy to come to your school and talk to you about what's happening so that I can share information. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is the first reading, new course approval AP seminar with Brooke and Becky.
Of course, you can stay if you want, but you don't feel like you have to.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. You can stay.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we do have our final 2 course proposals that will be our presentations for tonight in hopes that they will be part of our course selection for the 26-27 school year. So those 2 courses, we'll first start with AP seminar, then we'll transition to pre-AP Chem. I want to thank the staff at Century High School. We heard a course proposal last a month and 2 tonight. And thank you so much for the leadership of Principal Casper as she's helped us support her educators through the course proposal process. Also, tonight you'll hear from our chair, Hannah Holt, from the CCAC Community Advisory Curriculum Committee. She'll be sharing some of the questions and feedback that our committee had as we heard these 2 proposals just last week. And finally, the leadership of Becky King-Smith puts all of this together every year for us and does a fabulous job. And so with that, I will call Becky up to kick off tonight's presentation.
I will be very brief because I will just be introducing our educators today. So we'll go ahead and structure it that we'll have AP seminar go first, and Hannah will be able to provide our CCA feedback, and then we can take questions and comments for that, and then we'll do pre-AP chemistry. That sounds like a good plan to everybody. So with that, I'll invite Claire Munger up to present AP seminar. She is a language arts teacher at Century High School and currently teaches language arts 10 in advanced language arts, and she'll be presenting AP seminar.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me this evening. So, wanted to start and give you kind of a base of what AP Seminar is. So, it really strives itself on being a course that serves as a foundation for students to build skills, skills in which they will be analyzing and communicating about real world issues. And I'll go into that, what that looks like in a couple more slides. And one thing that I really appreciate about this course is the variety of sources that students are interacting with. There's quite a wide breadth of texts and media that students are using to analyze and interact with the world around them. Oops. Sorry about that. All right. So, in a nutshell, these are some of the goals that this course has for students, and a couple things to point out that I think are really favorable. That there's a strong emphasis on looking at particular topics from multiple differing perspectives. And I'll show you what that looks like in practice. And there's also a nice division between students working collaboratively and students working on their own. And again, I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment. So here's the breakdown. I know it's a bit small for you to see, but essentially the first couple of months of the school year are dedicated to practicing analysis with students, practicing synthesis with students, practicing communication verbally. And then as we move throughout the year, the AP curriculum has two main tasks, two main projects that the students are completing throughout the school year. And then there's the AP test at the end of the school year. I think these slides are perhaps the most helpful because the course is essentially built around performance task 1 and performance task 2. And this gives you kind of a breakdown of what that entails. So performance task 1 is kind of a nice blend of independent and collaborative work. Students work together to come up with a topic, a real world topic that interests them. So for my example, incarceration rates. From there, the students develop a research question about that topic. And one unique thing I think about this course is it's up to the students to develop a research question rather than a teacher just saying, go research this. And then the students divide up the research process. So all the students are doing their own paper. They're all doing their own research, but they're looking at that topic, at that question from a different perspective. And I have listed just a couple of examples of different lenses that students might dive into. And at the end, they come together and they collaborate and they pull out the most important information from their collective research papers and work together to create a cohesive presentation. So that takes 2 or 3 months, depending on how effective students are working. And then after that, we get into the second performance task. And this one is all independent. And this one centers around material that the College Board gives us. They give us what's called a stimulus packet. And within that stimulus packet, there's a variety of content. Like, for example, in 2005, the stimulus material included an excerpt from an Alzheimer's report, so some science. It included some Maori oral narratives from the New Zealand Journal of History. It included some photographs of abandoned storefronts during COVID. So they send a variety of materials, and the students collaboratively see what those materials have in common. So they're tasked with synthesizing and finding the commonalities between this wide variety of material. From there, they develop their own research question, but they also have to propose a potential argument. So, for example, if a student was working with this question, the how can the United States better integrate prisoners back into society. In this task, they would have to come up with an argument of here's what we should do and here's why. So they would have to come up with a solution and write about why their solution is feasible and why it's a good idea. And there's an oral presentation involved as well. And then, of course, there's the AP exam at the end of the term. It's 2 parts, and the part A and part B really mimic what students did earlier in the year. Performance task 1 is similar to part A, and performance task 2 is similar to part B. Sorry, it's quite dark. You can't quite see it, but. And in terms of making sure that this course is equitable, there are no prerequisites, so it will be open to all incoming 10th graders. And the studies that have shown the success rate of students who take AP in terms of graduating college, that stays consistent with our marginalized and underrepresented groups. So those groups benefit just as much from taking an AP course. And what I really like about this class in particular is how cross-curricular it is. So there's, like I mentioned, there's a bit of history, there's a bit of science, there's art. So I think all students could benefit from taking this course. And I will hand it over.
Great. So our first question that our community members have is this going to be a costly addition to what we have? And there are no material costs associated with this class. It's teachers pull from a variety of sources that are readily available. So yay for that. And then once we heard about this course as described, the community members were very excited about this, but felt that maybe the title of the course might not be easily understood by students. And so we wanted to make sure that there was a plan for making sure that students had access to what this course was so that they could also get excited about it and want to take this course. And there's a great plan for that as well. And then our students were just making comments about how valuable, like the critical thinking skills that would be developed. And a student in early college said they could apply this in their college classes that they were taking as well. So overall, a ton of support, and we had a unanimous consent to move forward.
If there are any questions, I'm hoping that I will be able to answer them.
The first question that I did have was the very first question that you had. I was concerned about money. So unfortunately, although I am 100% in support of this, one of the things I want to know is how do you screen a child to be able to take this course, or does it normally naturally lend itself to its own discernment and only certain students are going to volunteer to say, I think I really want to try that?
That's a great question. So any incoming 10th grader could elect to take the class. And what our plan to do is within our department is to start going around and advertising and talking with the 9th graders and giving them the rundown of what this course looks like and being available for them if they have more specific questions, especially given that this hasn't been taught at our school before. So you don't have the students talking to each other and saying, you know, what's what of the course. So that's something we plan on doing. And I think just being really transparent with students about, you know, this is a rigorous course. If you are, you know, if you're planning on taking AP courses in later years, I think this is a great fit. If you see yourself attending after high school, if you see yourself attending higher education, I think this would be a great fit. So just being very honest and open, but letting them know that it is rigorous, you know, and we want you to be successful. So think about how much time and effort you have to put into this course.
Thank you. I have a question that kind of goes with that. It's rigorous, so there's complex text, all that. It's an AP course, but it's also meant to be a course that other students that don't typically take AP courses can take. So foundational, which I feel is kind of like, well, so if I'm a student that I struggle with that type of rigor, will there be special supports for them? Or will there be at least some communication, like you said, transparency and honesty of like, is this a good fit for you? But maybe it's not like prerequisites, but here's the skills that you should have. Here's the expectations. Like, is that?
Yeah, I think that's something that will definitely be included when I propose this course to students. You know, if you feel confident writing an essay without a graphic organizer, then this might be a good fit. But if that's something you still need support with, that might be something to think about. And I also think too, the nice thing is that the first 3 months are really, there's not necessarily those heavy, important summatives that students are freaking out about. So there's plenty of time, I think, to really work with students individually to help them grow their skills before we get to the, okay, this is the big one, like this is going to impact your grade. And I'm actually part of an AP seminar community, an online community, and almost daily I get emails about, how did you scaffold for this? Or do you have any articles that get students to understand this, but the lexicon is a bit more digestible. So I'm willing to, scaffold as much as I can and support students, but be honest up front as well.
Another question that I have, or wondering that I have is, because this is year long?
Yes.
Would this compete with something like Avid, for example, or is there like another year-long opportunity that would kind of take students away from being able to access this, or the other way around? Does that make sense?
Do you mean like within their schedule, or?
Yeah, like is it going to compete with electives or other?
Yeah. So this would be an ELA 10. So it would go towards their ELA credit for, so it wouldn't be an elective credit. It would be their language arts credit for 10th grade. Yeah, good question.
So are there incoming, this is for sophomore now, yes?
Sophomores, yes. If typically the juniors and seniors, if they're going to take an AP language arts course, they usually take AP Lang or AP Lit. But if they wanted to take AP Seminar, they definitely could.
Sorry.
No problem.
I had the same question. I was emailing back and forth quite a bit earlier today with Brooke because I had the same question. And so I was just clarifying to my director colleague here that it's in lieu of English in the sophomore year. So this would be for sophomores only because juniors and seniors would presumably take their own English class, or they would take AP language or AP literature.
Or they could back up and take the AP seminar and hit some huge top. Yes.
So an 11th or 12th grader could take it, but it would not count as their language arts credit.
Got it.
Yes. So they would then be taking that as an elective. So kind of that, yeah. So it's because of the way that language arts standards are aligned, they're lumped together 9th and 10th grade, and then 11th and 12th grade. So that's why we couldn't necessarily give them their language arts credit for that. And Nancy, I looked up how many AP classes we offer in HSD based on last month's question. We offer 24 AP classes in HSD in the 25-26 school year. So if AP African American Studies is approved, that will bring us to 25, and this could potentially bring us to 26. So,
thank you.
If a student takes AP chemistry in their senior year and passes the AP exam, they could potentially not have to take Chem 101 in college. Is there an analogous class in college that they wouldn't have to take if they had this AP credit?
I think for the most part, that would depend from college to college. I don't think there is that direct correlation like there are in a lot of other AP courses. So I think it would be so dependent on what type of institution the student is wanting to attend.
Plus also sophomore year, maybe don't be thinking about that too much, right? Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting us ask questions.
Our next agenda item is the first reading, new course approval, pre-AP chemistry with Brooke and Becky.
I'm just going to hand it directly to our educator.
Okay. Hi. Good evening. My name is Nesma Gatchalian. I'm an AP chemistry teacher. I also teach chemistry and accelerated at Century High School. Okay. And I also want to mention I am also a representative of one of the representatives of the students, and I speak for their voices as well. I know they're not here, but I just wanted to throw that out there as well. So I am actually presenting the proposal for a new pre-AP chemistry course, which is designed to expand equitable access to advanced science learning. So essentially what this course is just a foundational inquiry driven course where students learn through hands-on experiments, data analysis, modeling, and scientific argumentation. So the course emphasizes on how scientists think through analyzing data, through building models, interpreting evidence, and understanding the particle level processes behind a chemical phenomenon. So students lead this course with that advanced reasoning skills, stronger scientific literacy, and greater confidence in pursuing STEM pathways. So why pre-AP Chem? Essentially, this is supposed to help support our HSD career and college pathways. It also helps to offer students the opportunity to earn college credit, as well as expose our students to a wide range of knowledge and transferable skills to ensure college readiness. Remember our mission? And so I hope this course helps to encourage opportunity gaps in science achievement for all students and support them to build confidence for success in further courses. So both the national and Oregon data both show that a third of our students actually demonstrate proficiency in science problem. And the gaps are even worse or wider for students with low income and underrepresented backgrounds. So specifically the national data at the NAEP, they show that only 36% of the US high school students that actually demonstrate proficiency in applied science, which is pretty poor. And Oregon alone, they have only 32% of our juniors that are even able to actually meet science benchmarks in 23, 24, and 25 as well. So we're pretty low. And so I'm hoping that this course does help bridge that gap. And so additionally, I want to mention College Board, because they too also report that significant disparities are shown in participation and enrollment in these advanced courses, specifically based off race and socioeconomic status. So again, this course hopes to address this by expanding access and giving all students this access to a rigorous and inquiry-based science instruction, but in a more supportive high school environment. Not only that, I'm hoping for it to actually bridge the gap between general chemistry, AP chemistry, and AP bio, because they also have their first unit on chemistry as well as like our health science and engineering course. Why? Because there's a strong alignment. And with that strong alignment, there's better outcomes. So, so that's basically why I believe that this course is supportive. I'm sorry, I'm going too far. Okay. So the course overview. So according to College Board, there are 4 actual units there. There's the structure and properties of matter, chemical bonding and interactions, and chemical quantities, as well as the chemical transformation. So there are these 4 units that is stretched out in the whole year. But for students to have this very digestible, I have broken this down. I re-looked at it. I'm going to break it down so that, of course, it's going to be scaffolded so that all diverse learners can actually understand this. So for the first unit, there's the atomic structure and periodic table that can be broken down. Of course, there's chemical bonding, reactions, stoichiometry, there's acid-base equilibrium. So they're all going to be broken down based off these four main units. So not only that, I'm going to use their inquiry-based labs to also help support this curriculum as well. Not only that, this course also aligns with the NGSS, the Next Generation Science Standards, which is also our course outcomes. Okay, so this will help meet those course outcomes for our 10th graders. So I do want to mention this. I know it's not on the slide, but this pre-AP Chem would be in lieu of the Chemistry 10 for the sophomore. So if they decide to take that one instead, it would be a sophomore level class. So why the pre-AP Chem? So the biggest component of why I like this course is a couple reasons. One, this is actually a great alignment for our colleges. Specifically, we can offer dual credit with this class. And so I personally am working with Portland Community College, but then you can also offer it through the Willamette Promise, specifically Western or even OIT. So kids can actually earn college credit. And so this course specifically is a 5-unit course. You get 3 units for the lecture and the 2 for the lab. And so essentially, again, if I'm teaching it, it's free through PCC, but if you're doing it through Willamette, Willamette Promise, it's $30. But again, it's cheap. That's the idea. So that same course, if you go to PCC, it's $695. If you go to OSU, it is $1,920 for that exact same course. Or if you go to PSU, $1,140. So the big benefit is it reduces that future tuition cost. Another, it accelerates your college completion. Not only that, it also satisfies the science requirements for most, well, not the most, various degrees. If you are taking STEM, you do have to take more science courses. So AP Chem is one that they can take as well. But the big idea right there is it removes financial barriers for higher education, especially for our underrepresented folks here. So that is why I really like offering or would like to offer this course. Another one is that this is a clear alignment with our CCPs, our health science, our engineering, and our bioscience technology. So this actually helps provide that foundation for those 3 pathways. For their health science, for our students specifically, it also helps, again, with the transferable skills. We got our analytical skills that they can gain from our pre-AP Chem, as well as some others like some other content that can help with anatomy and physiology or some of their medical sciences. So not only content, but also transferable skills. Even with our engineering pathways, concepts like the principle of chemical bonding or reactions can actually help with engineering applications, as well as problem-solving skills. It can directly transfer into the engineering design process. And then with the bioscience technology pathway, laboratory techniques, data analysis, those are all relevant for the biotechnology pathway. So again, this pre-AP Chem helps provide these students a strong foundation and early confidence in these pathways as well. So dual credit pathways, and it's also accessible to all students. So this course is open enrollment. Any students, there's no prerequisite. It's student choice. You can take it if you're interested. Again, it's more about messaging. So I do have to message to these kids about what this course is about. This is also not a prereq for AP Chem. I want to be clear on that because some kids can just take regular Chemistry 10 and just jump right into it. However, you do get a stronger foundation if you do take this. and they're actually more successful if they do take this course. Because right now in Oregon, there's only 15% of our students that are actually getting a 3 or higher, and that's for all AP exams. So I want to boost those numbers, right? So research shows that Naharro and Tomco, they show that students in low poverty schools are more likely to enroll in advanced classes, just like we see in Century, just like we're seeing in Glencoe. We are seeing that students are actually enrolling. So I actually looked at the data in the last 4 years, specifically for accelerated chemistry. And I've seen that in the background information, we're kids, about 35% of kids who are white are enrolling. And that's in respect to the 39% of the student body. For the Asians, we got 28, 11 for the student body. For Hispanics, we got 19%, 32, and a little underrepresented, but we're getting there. And then with our multiracial, we got 13%, and that's overrepresentation because there's 10% of them are actually multiracial. And then with our Blacks, we're getting 4%, which is representative of our actual the population. So we are actually getting and serving these underrepresented students. And I want to continue doing that and serving these students. So that's what this pre-AP Chem course, it's supposed to provide students with this access and engaging instructions, provide that opportunity for dual credit, and of course, give them that early introduction to STEM career possibilities. So I want to thank you for your time and consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, I will ask questions after.
Just give you a few questions and comments that we had and then open it up. Yes. So our committee wanted to know why are we doing this right now? What it seems like there's a lot of things going on. Why is this the moment? And Century High School has been very proactive. They're really looking at the broad spectrum of classes that are available through a college board and are going through and finding the courses that fit really well with the other courses that would be supportive in their school. So we were really impressed with that. We had a student comment that that transition from the regular chemistry to the AP chemistry is very challenging. And we had another community member say that his daughter was taking that class and she would not have been able to take that class successfully without family support. And so that really goes back into that equity piece of it's too big of a jump for most students to do without that additional support that they would be getting in AP pre-chem. So, and then along with that, our committee really was, again, we're improving the diversity of classes that we're offering. We would be expanding that so that students with different levels of engagement and interest are going to have more classes available that meet their interest in those types of courses as well. And then just really want to emphasize that our committee wants these courses offered not just at Century High School. We want them offered at all of our high schools so that we can be meeting those needs of our students across the board. And again, everyone recommended that this course be moved forward.
Any questions? Yes. Okay. Well, I just want to start off by saying thank you for the presentation. I love absolutely any improvements to science and HSD. I'm a little bit biased, but I love it. So I'm an early college student and I took Chem 151 like 4 terms ago, I think. Great class. I was just wondering what credits it would cover for high school diplomas because I took Chemistry 151 as my biology credit through early college. So what would it cover for?
It should be a science credit, but are you talking about the dual credit portion?
Sorry?
I'm not understanding your question.
So what credits on a diploma would pre-AP Chem cover?
It should be in lieu of the science credit that it's substituted. So if kids don't take that chem, they take that one, they still get that 1 year.
Yeah. No, the majority of students accessing this class would be 10th graders who generally access chemistry. So they could access chemistry or pre-AP chemistry.
And then I had one other question. With the labs, I remember the labs were obviously a bit more in depth than most high school labs were, and we definitely needed the equipment that from the community college that we don't have in high school. So how would those labs be performed in a high school?
Most of the stuff that we have are actually used even in AP. So I have not really had to order anything new. I've been just using most of the stuff that we have in AP Chem. I'm going to essentially use the same materials. We're not going to pay any, we don't need extra stuff. That's what I'm saying. We have everything. We are set because of the fact that we have stuff available for AP Chem. So
are the labs that they're taking in this class the same labs that they would take if they took like 151 through PCC? Or are they modified?
So at least right now, currently, we have the similar labs. Yes. There are some changes to them because, I do tweak them because of the fact that, again, I do want to break it down more for kids versus the college level, but essentially they are the same.
Thank you.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I understand differentiation and I understand ongoing assessment, but the word that you've used a couple of times, I don't understand. Scaffolding. Could you explain to me what that is?
That's building up, and so they understand it. And then differentiation is different, I guess, serving them at different levels. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So I think if you like the word scaffolding in education literally comes from scaffolding in construction, right? So if you think of when you're making repairs to a building or you're building a building, you put the scaffolds around it to support the building in the process of building it.
Okay, so it's figurative.
Yes. So scaffolding in education means we put the supports around the student for them to access things. So this could be things like sentence frames where students then have a word wall for vocabulary to choose from to help them craft some of their essays and responses to questions.
I apologize.
Yep, no worries. We don't expect you to know all of our like fun words in education, so feel free to ask.
Thank you so much for the presentation and to all your background work, and also to the CCAC for the time that you spent reviewing this. You answered a couple of my questions. It's in lieu of ideally in lieu of 10th grade chemistry. There's no prerequisite for the class. So I know that at least in my personal experience, last year there weren't sufficient students at Liberty High School to fill an AP Chem class. So my wondering is, with having students wanting to possibly take AP Pre-Chem, you have both available maybe at one school, AP Pre-Chem, AP Chem. Are we going to have sufficient students to fill these classes? And is this going to be something where, you take maybe the AP Pre-Chem in 10th grade and, does that diminish interest for AP Chem? And so then, do we need both? And do we need both, at all schools? So I just wonder how do we see this playing out in a long-term way where we can, have enough students to sustain both of these classes?
Well, I think it's a multitude of things. One is messaging and communicating with students to ensure that we have the numbers. And then because right now, currently, we do have all three sections. And they are, like, for example, we have accelerated chemistry. They're all filled. We got 33 in each of the classes. And I also have about 20 in my AP. Yeah. And then all my other regulars are filled too, 33, 32. So it's, again, messaging, putting the word out there, communicating them so that we have the numbers, so that we don't, so that we ensure that everyone understands like what pathway they would like to have. Not only that, I feel that if we have it every year, we can ensure not if, let's say, another school like Liberty, because last year I actually had some kids commuting to my to Century and to take that course because they weren't offered. And it is an issue sometimes, granted. But again, it's more about messaging, communicating effectively, ensuring we have the numbers.
Yeah, I was just going to add a couple of things to this, is that we a course like pre-AP chemistry or AP seminar, where we start to expose students to these AP courses at younger levels, is sometimes a goal to try to encourage them to take APs at the higher levels as well. So I think one of the goals is by adding a class like pre-AP chemistry, it will encourage more students to then access AP chemistry because they feel confident and have the skills to do so. I know that our presenters today are both from Century. After the CCAC on Monday night of last week, on Tuesday, I talked to all of our other principals across the district, and both Liberty and Glencoe, our other AP schools, are very interested in offering AP seminar and pre-AP chemistry next year as well. So our goal is that while Century is proposing it, all 3 of our AP high schools will be able to offer these classes next year. As I had mentioned earlier, we are close. We have 24 AP classes. And I do also want to be honest and transparent, is that when you start to offer that many AP classes, and that's not to say every high school offers all 24, but when you start to offer that many unique different courses, we do sometimes have to talk about the rotation of potential classes and what makes sense to offer every year versus on an every other year, and really being clear in communication with our families about that, so kids can do their course planning intentionally, right? That's asking a 10th grader to think 2 years ahead of time. So we need to be really clear in our communication with students and families about that. But I think all these things we're working towards is to be able to provide more robust offerings for our students at every grade level.
Comment on the question, I guess. So comment, yes, great to see we're planning to offer it at all the schools. I know, very proud of the shuttle system, very proud of, you say, Liberty kids coming over. But I do think when we're targeting someone in the 10th grade, they may not have access to their own transportation. That they're less mature student, less likely to maybe have the confidence to go to a different high school. So, yeah, I love the idea of having it across all the schools, especially when we're targeting 10th grade. If you could go back to the slide deck, page 13 with you remember the one with the green columns, right? When I don't know if you're familiar with our conversation upstairs, but if I look at those Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4, that seems to draw a lot of parallels with our discussion upstairs with standards-based grading and like what course objectives. Those feel like course objectives to me. They also seem chronological and build on each other over time. So the question is, if in a growth over time grading model, how do you balance sort of we're moving on from one content area to another in the sequence flow of the class, but the fact that an AP exam is going to be more comprehensive, and you may have now talked about issues in Unit 1 when you have to take that AP exam in May.
To be honest, I'm still figuring that out right now with AP Chem. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for doing this as well. I mean, I can lay out already the course outcomes too, just like you, but in terms of the actual the grading over time, the way I would see it is for each of them would be most likely a standard. And so most of the stuff, I mean, but the issue that I'm coming up across even with AP Chem is that they're all technically equal. And that's a hard thing to do, especially because of the fact it's built over time. And so I'm coming across that same issue right now with AP Chem. And so I don't have that answer because, again, I'm still working through it myself already.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Thanks for that. Thank you.
The other thing when developing the course outcomes as well is that one of the things I mentioned in the presentation upstairs is really talking about the skills and the concepts, not always the content, right? So, so for instance, some of the skills that I imagine, I've not taken pre-AP chemistry, but I would imagine that there's certain laboratory and investigation skills that exist in all 4 of those units of study. And so a course outcome could be broad enough to address something like that, that then you would have that in all 4 of the units.
I have a couple questions. First, thank you again for the presentation and for being here. A couple questions that I have are, oh my goodness, I should have written them down. Oh my gosh.
Just get one out.
I know. I should have written them down. Give me 1 second. Oh, how many pre-AP courses do we have as a district? And then the second question, more specific to this specific course, is how do the dual credits align with pre-AP chemistry and AP chemistry at the college level? Because it was my understanding that pre-AP courses don't earn college credits, but I may be completely wrong in that. And so that's my second question. My third question is, since pre-AP chemistry is supposedly supposed to bridge the gap between chemistry and AP chemistry, from a staffing perspective for, let's say, when this does go live in all of our high schools, have we ever considered, like, can we potentially just break up some of the knowledge that you would learn in pre-AP chemistry and just absorb that on one end with general chemistry and the other end with AP chemistry, or is that just not aligned at all?
I will offer answers to some, and then I'll hand it to Nessa for a few of the others. This is our first pre-AP offering. So in Hillsboro School District. So this is a new area of exploration for us. Those are generally aligned at 9th and 10th grade level, like this one is, for example. We do also have some AP classes, though, that are accessed at the 9th and 10th grade level, too. So potentially down the road, you might see us coming back with more pre-AP offerings. In regards to, I can offer some answers to the kind of the dual credit, but I think Nessa can get into a little more in regards to alignment. AP and IB get you credit through examination, right? So, and it's not a guarantee. So for instance, like Claire was sharing about AP seminar, that's going to really vary widely from school to school, how they accept that. And you can score anywhere, but you can score between a 1 and a 5 on an AP exam. Some colleges, you have to get a 4 to get any credit. Some colleges, you have to get a 3 to get any credit. So it's very variable in regards to that. However, colleges do look very well on the strength of schedule for students. So even if you don't necessarily get the credit from the university, when it comes to admissions and stuff like that and scholarship applications, taking a strong schedule looks very desirable to a college. So even if you don't get the credit, still really good benefits to taking AP and IB. Dual credit gets you a college transcript. So there's no question of will this transfer to a college. You are going to college already with a college transcript. So students who take pre-AP chemistry and access the chemistry 151 will leave this class with that credit on their high school transcript. They will also leave that class with a PCC transcript now. So it's direct. It's very tangible. In regards to the alignment of the dual credit to pre-AP versus AP, I'll let Nessa address that one.
Thank you.
So with the alignment, well, actually, I want to mention about chemistry. Chemistry actually has an adopted, the HSD has an adopted curriculum, and it's the patterns-based curriculum. So that patterns-based versus the AP, the alignment is not very strong. And I know that because, I teach both of it. So, but I have incorporated. Why? Because I teach AP, I could incorporate some of that stuff, but again, the alignment wasn't strong enough because we don't have the time. There's a lot of, again, different levels in that one classroom that I have to make sure I differentiate for each levels. So that's also the challenge there too. So when we have that pre-AP Chem, that's when I can actually incorporate and have all those actual course outcomes that PCC has that perfectly aligns with what College Board is actually offering. And the thing is, and I know this because I know the dean at PCC, they have finally finalized the course outcomes for all colleges in Oregon. So that so this course is actually the same course outcome for any college now. It is official since this school year. And so what I'm teaching right now is going to be transferable for anywhere in Oregon. And so, yes, it is a separate transcript. And so if a student wants to major in, business, and yes, I did have a student who's an econ major. She took my AP in general, but that, and then she was able to transfer. So she is done with her science credit. She doesn't need to take science anymore. So The idea is, at least with AP Chem, I don't really have to make any adjustments to it because of the fact that the course outcomes from KCC align just perfectly with the College Board. So I don't really have to make any adjustment. However, there is a caveat here. If, let's say, a teacher from Glencoe, and I know him, he said he wants to do the through Willamette Promise. They specifically have their own tests that they have to distribute. However, the course curriculum is exactly the same. So they just have to give their test and then they just submit it to them and they still get the credit. So it's not like they're teaching anything new. And again, it's the articulation agreement that we have from the colleges and high school. It will work out. It's an agreed upon.
So if I hear you correct,
yeah,
you're going to do differentiation.
Yeah,
you're going to do standards-based grading.
Yeah,
for everybody.
That's the idea.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Rendition. What? No. I think what I'm saying is, how are you going to live? And I appreciate your enthusiasm. I know I see it in you because you're like, we can do this, let's do this, and I get that. But we just sat upstairs and we talked about standards-based grading, and we're talking about the opportunity to take to make grading more equitable, at the same time opening up something that might make it more inequitable. And now you've got pre-AP. I'm just asking.
So at least for me, I personally think that this is actually helps with the differentiation. And I know that because when I do look at, and I have looked at the actual research on track and how it can be inequitable and how some schools are detracting, but it's actually making that school inequitable. So that idea, like I get that because I have to be versed with that in case that does come up. Mm-hmm. And so again, the research is mixed. And at least narrative speaking, and even some research has shown that if you actually keep it separate, it eases, it gives kids that actual access to that higher learning. Even if they don't, even though they don't have, let's say, the know-how, they can still build that skill in, let's say, an advanced course. And so having, let's say, and I'm gonna use this example, if I had a classroom, and I have had this classroom in a high school, and where everything was all in one, where I had the honors option in the actual regular. So I had some high achievers, I had some from the lower end, I have all the spectrum. That is hard by itself. And so it makes it, at least as a teacher perspective, it is a bit easier because I'm putting some of the all level and some higher ups that can go here, sort of easier to differentiate, granted. But again, in terms of the research, it is mixed. Some say it's inequitable, some say detracting is not. It just depends on the research. And I personally think this is actually an equitable way because it does help people gain that access. It does provide that foundation for kids, and it helps with differentiation, to help support those foundations.
I'm just hoping that if we have any more questions, that they can be sent to me. That would be just fine. Only because we have Jennifer and Lynn who've been on our screen waiting for our next presentation. So if there's any more questions, so please feel free to send those my way, and I'll make sure I get a response to you.
We promised before.
That's okay. Thank you so much. I just wanted to kind of wrap us up on this.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is the Cognitive Systems Accreditation Report with Brooke.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm so excited about our presenters who are on our screen, and I worked with both Lynn and Jennifer for over a year getting ready for our Cogni accreditation. And I just want to first and foremost, which you wouldn't see in the situation page, so much time, energy, effort, and love
in that year of preparation, not only from our staff, but our students and families as we prepared, had our evidence ready to go, all of the hard work of our buildings as the accreditation team came in the week of August to not only see our buildings, but also meet families and students and educators. And finally, I want to thank our board for both Katie and Yvette, who represented so well in their interviews for our school board. So thank you for that. A couple of you were able to hear this presentation, so thank you for your time as you came for that final day as we heard that summary. So I appreciate that. But it really is, I think, a celebration, and it really is something to have an outside agency thoroughly examine from K-12, from so many different voices, to give us their feedback and their review. So I hope you enjoy their presentation. Feel free to ask any questions as they wrap that up. And we will get our final review, a more lengthy summary, towards the end of this month or potentially beginning of the new year. So Jennifer and Lynn, thank you for being here. And I will be here just in case you need me. If you could say advance slide, we have our great tech team here as they will then review advance that slide for you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, board members, for hearing our presentation this evening. As Brooke said, we have been on this journey for quite some time, and this is a culmination, but more of that is it is a celebration, and also a look forward. So go ahead and advance. I'm going to turn this over to Lynn.
Welcome to everybody. Thank you for having us tonight. This display that you see here on the slide are all the words that were provided to us from the interviewees from all of our interview processes with parents, staff, students. And the question we asked was, if you met someone that didn't know anything about Hillsboro School District, you have to describe it in one word. What would that one word be? So this particular display is, as I said, everybody, all different levels. If you could advance the slide, please.
Is there any way to
This is what students think about Hillsboro School District.
Lynn, if you could speak a little louder as you present, that would just be great.
I will try my best.
Okay.
Advance, please. And this is what parents think about Hillsboro School District. You can see some very common words so far in all of them. Advance one more time. And here's what teachers and staff think about Hillsboro School District. I think the community piece is very, very strong because we see that up forward in all of our displays. Advance. So our participants for all of our interviews, which again, they all had to answer that question, worth a total of 410. And that was 2 of our board members, district administrators, school administrators, as I said, your support professional staff, students, and parents. Advance. One of the other things that we did during our visit was do classroom observations at all of the schools that we had the opportunity to visit, which was kindergarten through 12th grade. And these are the different learning environments. The Elliott tool is a cognitive tool that is used to observe the learning environment from the student's point of view. So you can see that the district average in all but 2 of the categories were much higher than the Cognia network average. And the network average is based on over 250,000 observations in this previous school year last year. But in all, Cognia does about 1 million observations around the world. So this is something to be very proud of. The classes were extremely engaging. Students were active. It was a pleasure to visit all of the classrooms. Advance.
One of the things that we wanted to point out as we were going through and visiting schools and reading through all the documents and the evidence that was provided is that Cognia has a set of characteristics for an effective school system. And what was very clear to us is that the Hillsboro School District pillars from your strategic plan fit very well with the Cognia characteristics of an effective school system. So a lot of the things that we saw really meshed together well with continuous improvement process and the things that you're doing. So already going into it, we could see that there are a lot of good things happening and that the continuous improvement process at Hillsboro School District is spot on. Go ahead and advance. So throughout the visit and reviewing all the documents, we came up with a list of key observations that we saw. And the very first one demonstrates a clear culture of equity and inclusion. You saw that in all the terms that we presented, that Lynn talked about, all the things that people had to say about Hillsboro. We were just blown away by the culture and climate of the school district and the schools that we visited. Everyone is so welcoming, so inviting, helpful. All those words fit for us too. So that was definitely a key observation and something to really celebrate. Maintain alignment and shared expectations for the strategic plan from the school board all the way to classroom educators. This was something that really struck me personally. It's very clear that your strategic plan really drives improvement in the district, but not just that the district office is working off a strategic plan, but that everyone, including school board members, all the way down to classroom teachers and even parents, understand there is a strategic plan, what it is, what we're working towards, and what we need to do to get there. And that's super important. And that says a lot about the communication process. Employs support strategies designed to engage all learners. Multiple measures of learner performance to inform and improve instruction. So a lot of data, a lot of good use of data to make instructional decisions, but also to drive your strategic plan and monitor your strategic plan. And then also the robust college and career pathways that are offered in your district and supported by strong community partnerships. That is something we saw. I know when I gave the presentation at the end of the visit, I talked about Brooke, who I'm going to talk about here. Eventually being mayor of Hillsboro, but she was able to point out to me all of the things, in town, that junior achievement building and that they get to meet with the mayor and they can see the mayor, things like that. So the community just really has a lot of support for the schools and the district and vice versa. It's just the entire thing is a community feel. So those were some of the key observations that we saw when we were there for the visit. Go ahead and advance. And then we determined 3 specific opportunities for growth. And these are nothing new, I think, to your district personnel. Strengthen professional development and support for educators in implementing targeted programming. So there is professional development and support for teachers, but focus on targeted programming. expand opportunities for constituent participation in leadership experiences. And then ensure consistent implementation of effective instructional strategies across all classrooms and student populations. So just making sure that there is consistency with the good things that are happening in and around the district, that those things are happening in all the classrooms. And go ahead and advance. Okay, I'll let.
Yeah. So as I said, while we were doing our interviews, while we were visiting classrooms, these were some of the words or statements that really stood out to us that I think are so important to share. One of my favorites is the fact that the principal said, "We don't fix kids, we adjust systems." So you're putting in place programs, processes, learning strategies that help kids. Next slide, please. Here's some others. We focus on real life skills like shapes, which could help us if we were tilting a floor. Again, just as Jennifer stated when she was talking about how your strategic plan goes from the school board all the way down to the educators in the classroom. One of the principals also said all the goals are aligned from the district to the teacher. It's our golden thread. Next slide.
Okay, so as Brooke said, the final piece to this process is the final accreditation report. Typically that comes in about 30 days. I know we are over those 30 days. Brooke and I did have a little conversation about that. It is in the process of being reviewed and going through the stages of review that Cognia requires. So I have had some communication about it, so I'm hoping that it gets to you shortly. But in that, you will get an IEQ score, and it will list noteworthy practices and then areas for improvement. And the areas for improvement will be based on those opportunities for improvement, I think is how the slide was titled in the presentation. And then the final report gets submitted to Cognia's Global Commission, and they are the body that actually grants accreditation status or renewal. So once it goes to their commission meeting, they will review it and then approve it. And then at that point, your accreditation status will get renewed for 6 years. So that's the next step there. And then Lynn and I will check in with everyone annually, just see how things are going. And then on the 3rd year of the cycle, we will do a mid-cycle progress review, which is not extensive, not at all like the review we just went through, but it will focus on those areas of improvement and what's been done in those areas since we did the visit, and then what the next steps are as far as where you're going with those different things. So that's really the end of it. I think there's one more slide, I believe. Yes. This is a picture that one of the reviewers took while we were there. And we thought this was a great way to sum up the presentation because we all felt this, deep in our hearts, that everyone matters and everyone belongs here at this school, but at every school and every building in Hillsboro School District. It really is clear that this is important, and we appreciate that. So thank you so much for letting us present to you, and we're happy to answer any questions if you have any questions.
I do have one question. You mentioned that we're on a 6-year cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I do my math right, sorry, not pre-AP Tim, but the 2019 or 2018 was the last accreditation?
I think so.
Yeah. Let me, so Cognia every so often updates their accreditation review process. So the review that your district just went through is a new protocol that this is the 4th year that we've done that protocol. And this protocol is a 6-year cycle. I believe the one that they went through last time was set up as a 5-year cycle. So the dates might be off. And sometimes, and also because of COVID, some people were pushed back, forward, different things. So it might not line up exactly 6 years from your last review, but it should move to the next review.
Okay, so if we were curious as to what that assessment looked like, if we sent you an email, you could share that with us?
Yes, because it's in our workspace. So we
That's
could
right.
definitely pull that up. Yeah. I am thinking it's more like the 1920 year because I remember being online and doing a lot of the interview work kind of around COVID time. So that's why that's a nice benchmark. I think it was more like in that 2020. So it makes sense, as Jennifer is saying, that there's been an adjustment of kind of windows over our last 4 years of assessment. That it was a little bit later, Nancy, than that 18-19 school year.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for spending a little more time with us in Hillsboro. We met when you gave the presentation here in the boardroom. Afterwards, superintendent and I discussed, or he came and asked, I think Katie was there with us, like, do you think this is something the board would want to see? And I don't know how y'all feel, but looking at those word clouds and those quotes from students, staff, and teachers at the end, like, that made me feel exceptionally proud to be HST. So I hope has the same impact on y'all as well.
Any other questions or comments? No. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Lynn. And thank you, Jennifer, for being here this evening with us. Thank you again.
Thank you all. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Our next agenda item is a financial report with Scott.
Good evening again, everyone. I would characterize November, excuse me, as operational execution was quite good. One of the things that I'm seeing in the team that I'm very pleased with is there's real energy to look at ways to continue to find efficiencies and ways to improve processes, particularly with our schools on the front end. But with that, I know it's getting a little bit long in the evening, so I'm happy to just take any questions you all have.
Any questions for Scott? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is we have a few action items. The item is to adopt planning calendar for the 2026-27 budget. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that the board of directors adopt the planning calendar for the 2026-2027 budget.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Watson and seconded by Director Thomas that the Board of Directors adopt the planning calendar for the 2026-27 budget. Is there any further discussion? No. Rose, can you call the roll, please?
Sorry, I just have one thing. Sorry, and it's a correction, I think. On page 33 of the packet, it says the notice of the budget meeting will be published in the Hillsboro Tribune. I think, is that the Hillsboro News Times now? If they change the rate. Just since we're voting on this, I wanted to make sure that the paper of record that we were gonna mention is correct.
I think it changed 2019, 2020 to News Times, yeah.
Thank you. Rose, can you call the roll, please?
Patrick McGuire.
Aye.
Katie Ryan.
Aye.
Nancy Thomas.
Aye.
Jessica Harden McCarthy.
Aye.
Mark Watson.
Aye.
Sheehan Kim.
Aye.
Yvette Pantoja.
Motion carries. Our next agenda item is the
is the approved new high school course AP African American Studies. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that the Board of Directors approve the proposed course AP African American Studies.
Second.
It has been moved by Director McGuire and seconded by Director Thomas that the Board of Directors approve the proposed course AP African American Studies. Is there any further discussion? No. Rose, can you call the roll, please?
Patrick McGuire.
Aye.
Katie Ryan.
Aye.
Nancy Thomas.
Aye.
Jessica Harden Mercado.
Aye.
Mark Watson.
Aye.
Sheehan Kim.
Aye.
Yvette Pantoja.
Aye. Motion carries. Our next agenda item is the first reading of policies. Travis, is there anything you'd like to add here?
No, nothing to add. If you have any questions, please reach out to the cabinet member whose name is listed.
Great, thank you. That brings us to HCU HEA report. Who would like to go first?
Evening, Chair Pentelhoff, Vice Chair Kim, Superintendent Ryman, fellow school board members, and administrative leaders. My name is Mary Kay Babcock. My pronouns are she, her, and. I am a proud music educator of 26 years, and it is an honor and a privilege to serve as your Hillsboro Education Association president. Last February, students of color spoke powerfully about the harm caused by hate speech and the importance of educators interrupting it when it occurs on our school campuses. In response, the district launched the Not of My School initiative via their task force. HEA has been proud to support the Equity, Access, and Engagement Department in this work, helping to create meaningful professional development that fosters truly safe and welcoming environments for our marginalized staff and students. We hope that this initiative is implemented with mindfulness and care in every building. Unfortunately, we have learned that some students are not taking the lesson seriously, and in some cases, incidents of hate speech have increased following advisory lessons. This signals the need for deeper engagement, deeper reflection, and continued improvement. We cannot give up. We must lean into this work together and commit to doing better. Last month, I shared that educators across the district continue to experience rising student behaviors, limited support staff, and growing workload pressures that make it difficult to meet every student's needs. To address these concerns and to ensure both students and educators are supported during the discipline process, especially the re-entry of a student to the classroom after an incident, HEA has continued to advocate for consistent adherence to Article 7, which is safety, student support, and discipline. We appreciate human resources. Your work to develop guidance checklists for administrators, as this contract language is fairly new. This will help ensure the right protocols and the supports are in place before a student returns to the classroom. And I believe this added structure will bring much needed clarity and alignment across all our buildings. HEA also conducted a special education survey last month to better understand the challenges our SPED educators are facing. We are actively addressing concerns related to lots of prep, case management, and lunchtime in direct partnership with student services directors. And we are working hard to resolve barriers that prevent educators from delivering required SDI minutes. These are minutes that are legally obligated to be provided to our students via their IEPs. During HEA's quarterly check-in with Superintendent Ryman last week, I emphasized the importance of strengthening trust and communication between administrators and educators, especially when navigating challenging situations that are uncomfortable and potentially confrontational with students and families. To improve morale, building climate and culture, I encourage our administrative teams to approach these moments with openness, with grace, and with a genuine willingness to partner with staff. This is the type of support educators are begging for, and know that they are seen, they are heard, and they are valued. During our conversation, we all agreed that a more human-centered approach would go a long way, fostering stronger collaboration between staff and admin. To repair the harm caused by the district's initial response to an incident last week, we have requested immediate restorative steps and clear preventative measures via admin training to ensure similar situations are handled appropriately moving forward. Lastly, I want to acknowledge the concerns raised by Chair Pantoja last month regarding how our support for families impacted by immigration and customs enforcement has been represented in the media and online. I appreciate Vice Chair Kim reaching out for an in-person conversation along with Chair Pantoja to ensure clarity and shared understanding with HEA. In response to the question asked last month, have you asked the students what they want? My answer is yes. I've also spoken directly with parents to ensure their voices are part of this conversation as well. To further strengthen student safety, I look forward to working together with you, our school board, to refine and pass policy language provided by HEA to support and protect our immigrant students and staff. School board, Superintendent Ryman, executive leaders, I appreciate our continued ability to have honest conversations, to be proactive, and to problem solve and strengthen our working relationships. Let's continue to commit to doing better for our students, our staff, and our community. In times of darkness, we have the power to be the light for one another. I hope you all have a wonderful, restful winter break and enjoy the holiday season.
Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Ryman. My name is Alicia Infante, and I'm the VP of Political Action for Hillsboro Classified Staff, and I'll be giving our union board report this evening. This is my 5th year with HSD, and I'm the wellness instructor at Reedville Elementary and a parent of a 7th grader at Pointer. Tonight, I'm speaking into the lens of the bigger picture. As we approach the state legislative session in the spring, budgets will be on the table, and we know that when we prioritize students, it simultaneously uplifts and supports teachers and classified staff. The two are directly related. So I want to speak directly to the consequences of the cuts made at the end of last school year. Cuts that were described as necessary, but the reality is this: we are not just feeling the impact, we are being pushed backward. Across our buildings, the effects are undeniable. Classified staff are reporting that fewer people are doing more work inside their buildings, and our students are paying the price. Essential supports were reduced or eliminated. Positions that anchored safety, behavior support, academic consistency, and emotional stability were cut. Proactive systems are collapsing into reactive ones. Any progress made in the last couple of years is being undone in months. We are hearing from classified on the front lines that rising student behaviors no longer have the staffing to respond effectively. TOSAs, success coaches, behavior specialists, if a building is lucky to still have one this year, or any support staff who once had the margin to build relationships with students, are running from crisis to crisis. Building counselors are now responding to behaviors all day and leaving little time to provide their intended mental health services. And when no additional support is available, classified staff are left navigating situations where students deserve immediate, collaborative, and trauma-informed care. But what they are receiving instead is supervision and containment. And not because educators don't know what to do, but because the system has taken away their capacity to do it. This is not maintaining services. This is not adapting. This is regression. And this is happening while our community faces trauma and fear that cannot be ignored. ICE activity in neighborhoods, detentions around us, and anxiety is spilling into our schools every day. Classified staff are often the first adults students turn to when they're scared. They see their bus drivers' faces before anyone else. They're welcomed into our buildings by kitchen staff for breakfast, greeted by the education assistant who meets them on the curb or opens their car door. We hear the real stories, we see the tears, and we carry anxiety children cannot name. But with the staffing cuts, many of us no longer have the time or space to support students as they desperately need. Consider this. Last school year's data across the district shows that we had a total of 94 school mental health professionals within the district. That includes counselors, psychologists, and social workers. There were 18,643 students. That is a 1 to 198 ratio. Let that sink in. One trained mental health professional for 198 students. And we know this much. When a child's physical, social, or emotional needs go unmet, we cannot expect them to learn, regulate, or thrive. But that was last year, and we now have entered a new level of trauma, one affecting every student in our district. ICE potentially detaining our students' families, the fear in our neighborhoods, and the uncertainty in our community. And this is not imagined. I don't have to guess how our students are feeling. I am living it with them every day, just like many of you are. So right now, every child in our district needs more support, every single one. And yet at this moment, there isn't a budget to provide even the most basic level of mental health and behavioral support our students require, let alone the level that they deserve. I want to recognize that the district is provided with a certain dollar amount from the state, a budget, if you will, and it is divided out in the best way possible. We understand this, but this is where we must think of the bigger picture and be prepared. Classified staff are asking the district to recognize that these cuts are not invisible. They are not neutral, and they are not something that we can simply adjust around. They are weakening our schools at the exact moment that our students need more from us, and yet we cannot provide. Classified staff, licensed staff, and a lot of people in this room, we show up because we all believe in this work and because our students deserve everything we can give them. But we all must recognize that we cannot continue moving backward. Our kids cannot afford it, our community cannot afford it, and our staff cannot sustain it. So I ask each of you who sit in positions of influence, those with the ear of decision makers, lawmakers, committee members, and association leaders, why do we continue on the same trajectory year after year? And I'm not referring to just 1 year versus another. We know the data for the last decade, 2 decades. The trajectory is consistently backwards, and there is always a reason. And on the rare occasions when we take 2 steps forward, it's not long before we're pushed 4 steps back. We're always facing another budget crisis, always short-staffed, always bracing for the next challenge, always going to need to ask for that bond renewal. And year after year, as in all of us, including myself, have somewhere along the lines accepted this as the norm. We accept it as the cost of working in education. And every year there is talk of better funding. And at the end of the day, there is never enough and nothing meaningful improves in our budget. And we carry on year after year thinking, maybe next year. So this is the bottom line. And I'm speaking directly to legislators, local leaders, administrators, board members, classified staff, licensed staff, parents, community members, all voters alike. We talk about preparing students for the future, but we keep funding their education like the future doesn't matter. So I'll ask it plainly, and I'll leave you all with this. Why do we accept underfunded schools as normal? Do our kids not deserve an education system that is abundantly funded? Their futures are worth more than what we have normalized. HCU is asking everyone to prepare to fight harder this time. Demand more and stop accepting what will only continue to underserve our kids. Thank you, and I hope everybody has a great holiday.
Thank you. This brings us to discussion time, and we'll start with our student representatives this week.
Hi, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who presented, to the audience that now left, but in general, just thank you for everyone who is here. I'd like to mention two things. One, at Hillsboro High School, there's going to be a mariachi concert tomorrow on Wednesday. And I invite anyone who can make it to please go. On the other aspect of what I was going to say, I currently know 12 to 13 of my friends and students who have a family member detained. Our community is being hit pretty hard, and it isn't a secret, and it is being affected quite a bit, our education. And I know in high schools and in middle schools and elementary, staff have taken upon themselves to work incredibly hard. And I just want to say I appreciate everything that has been put towards helping students. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to Superintendent Ryman.
Jocelyn, thank you for sharing that. Thanks for being here at the meeting to share student perspective. Appreciate it. We didn't get to finish a couple of the conversations tonight, and I would just want to let everybody know that Chair Pantoja and Vice Chair Kim and Rose and I'll figure out how to, through a combination of board updates and mini sessions and the next board meeting, figure out how to continue those conversations, because I think two of them at the work session weren't done. I also want to acknowledge that for me, these meetings and our work is sometimes jarring, going from one topic to the next. We started talking about legislative advocacy. Thank you for your advocacy, Alicia. We went to talking about bond and really complicated taxation structures and a list of needs that we have. And then we talked about a complex issue of grading and mathematics. And then we got really heartfelt testimony from students who are worried about their safety and the safety of their moms and the safety of their classmates and friends. And then we pivot to talking about course proposals. And for me, that's, as a human being, which board members are and staff and students are, that's a lot that we're carrying right now. And I just want to encourage us that this winter and spring, these challenges are going to be met by us because we stay tight as a team and we stay in the conversation. And I want to remind directors that someone like Becky Kingsmith has worked for 25 years figuring out the grading policy, and you're not expected to know all the details. And if it helps bring your blood pressure down just a little bit, you know that you can rely on us as a cabinet group, and you can rely on our teachers and students for information that you need. I can't imagine what it's like to sit in those conversations and try to think, could I pass a quiz on this topic? Because when I listen to all those conversations, I think this is overwhelming. And then I'm brought to tears by the real lived experience of kids who I'm supposed to serve. And I know you all are experiencing that alongside me. And I just want to remind us that this holiday season, we should reflect on the kind of patience and stamina that we're going to need to meet these challenges together. And I'm proud to do that with you all. So thank you for being present in these conversations. We'll continue them until you feel well informed and equipped to make good decisions on policy and budget and all the things that you're called on to do as volunteer board members. I also have been experiencing this, and Beth spoke to this a little bit, the context for our resource management as public schools and the ability for us to innovate in schools the way that we want to has changed. If you came to the conversation this year and had been serving in public schools in 2015, you would notice that the same tools and conversations that we used to have don't serve us completely anymore. The context has changed politically. We've had a global pandemic. We've had a birth rate drop and cost increases that are exceeding our revenue. And so we're faced with a new set of challenges. I also want to say that there's a new set of opportunities and ways to optimize what we do and partnerships that we continue to explore, and entrepreneurial spirit, which we as leaders and our students are implementing to get through these times. I can list examples of our partnership with Forest Grove and talking to our legislators. We mentioned that earlier today. We've opened up our online program so that students can be served more in these difficult times they're facing. We've talked about land sales. We've talked about CTE expansion, Pathways Center. You all have supported our work with all those things in Block 56 with Virginia Garcia and PCC. We are in the middle of innovations that'll help us get through this time and using our resources together. And I would ask that we all stay entrepreneurial and we all stay open-minded about what the solutions are to the challenges we're facing, because the toolbox of 10 years ago is insufficient for what we're dealing with. I think we need a communication shift. We need to be answering bluntly why it is that we have a structural deficit in public education in Oregon. We need to be asking the question that Alicia did: why can't we afford to fund public schools adequately? We need to remind people that education matters more now than ever, and we need to educate folks. We need folks to remember that we lived in a more stable time and we're in a destabilized time. And so we need to step up and start thinking as a team about how to show that transparently and then engage folks in the conversation about how to solve it, not the contrary, to disinvest in public education because our test scores are low. I know you're all there with me, but I just want to name that, and I want to start figuring out ways that we as leaders can talk about it because we're all experiencing it and feeling it. To that end, I am inspired by the Cognia presentation as well, because we have so much to be proud of in our community. And when visitors come from afar and they observe us and talk to us, they feel it immediately and they can name it and say, you all are all in for kids, your community cares about you, and you're all working on the same songbook with our strategic plan. I also want to celebrate for a second the victories that are happening at the state level with accountability. CTE, the bilingual seal, and interim assessments are now on the list of metrics we'll be able to choose, knock on wood, if the state board approves that. COSA and OSBA are going to submit a letter, I think, tomorrow in support of the new metrics and the new accountability structures. And so I see that gelling in the leadership that our team from Hillsboro has provided in putting pressure on the system to make a better, more bilingual, more career-driven accountability system means a lot to me personally, as somebody who cares about early literacy and who cares about the career pathways systems that we've set up in Hillsboro. We'll find ourselves in that accountability system, I believe. Also, shout out to Anthony Veliz and Cindy Avila, who accompanied me in a Spanish language coffee chat a week or two ago, where they made a bond presentation in Spanish to get the 70 attendees up to speed on what we're doing with our bond committee. I want to commend Beth for having engaged a more diverse group of people in our bond committee and also as our consultants in order for us to engage our community in a more broad way when it comes to asking and informing about our needs and asking us to tax ourselves to support our schools adequately with capital improvements and renovations and maintenance. So, thank you.
Thank you, Director Watson.
Thank you. So if you follow along with the legislature, they just recently received a report on the quality education model. I would say strangely optimistic coming out of that meeting. I did not think the perspective of I was on this, fortunate to be on this board in 2019 when the Student Success Act, including the Student Investment Account, passed, and almost immediately I was raising the alarm bell that what we were going to end up using those funds for was backfilling holes in the general fund budget that were deficient. For about 8 months, I was told, don't say that. We're not supposed to say that. But it's true. And it was almost as if the report they received this past week or 2 weeks ago, almost implied that the state now just expects that. So I have raised the question to two of the legislators that represent significant portions of the Hillsboro School District. Is it now the position of the state that the point of the student investment account is just to backfill the deficient funding of the general formula? So I haven't gotten a good answer yet. If I do, I will let you know. But I also say, heartwarming in that meeting, or encouraging in that meeting, was representatives, legislators from both parties saying we need to stop doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So 4 years ago, I pressed our same legislators that are currently seated about fundamentally changing the structure of the way we fund education based on 35-year-old concepts in Measure 5 and Measure 50. And I was told that that's not a thing that can happen in one session. Well, we're now 4 years later. I don't think it can happen during the short session, but I am optimistic that I see currently seated legislators saying we can't keep doing the same thing. And the legislature commissioned a report, $2.5 million, I think, that said it is unusual in America for a state to go 30 years under the same educational funding structure. So maybe the message is starting to get through. So on that front, a little bit optimistic. I would say if you've never had the opportunity to hear Superintendent Ryman read "What Do Snowmen Do at Night" to kindergartners and pre-Ks, I highly encourage you to participate in that activity. It was amazing. Glad it was part of the Hillsboro Schools Foundation book fair kickoff at a Barnes and Noble I didn't even know was there. Felt like they just tore down a Barnes and Noble across the street, and now there's one over there. But it was a super great opportunity. Now I love that book. They did not have that book, but it's in my Amazon list of things to get because I love that book. It was great. What Do Snowmen Do at Night? And Superintendent Ryman did a great job with the pre-K and Ks. Thanks to all the staff for all the presentations. I know we didn't get to finish some of our discussions, as you mentioned. I would say emailing questions is great, but it is not. Oftentimes our questions catalyze conversations amongst our colleagues. The only time we have to discuss these things in front of our colleagues is in public session. So if I sent an email to all the board with my questions so they would be aware of it, and we started a discussion on it, that could potentially violate Oregon public meeting law. I am not that kind of person. So I appreciate you saying, send me your questions after, but when I feel like the things that we all need to be talking about, that probably isn't going to work for me. So I guess I will apologize in advance. I will likely not be holding my questions till the end anymore because I don't get to them. So plan to be interrupted in your presentations by my questions. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Director Watson. Director McGuire?
Thank you. Briefly, I'll mention I appreciate the HCU report. I was troubled to hear about some of the regression, but it's good for us to know what's happening. And I remember the last time Mary Kay or maybe HCU several months ago discussed some of the behavioral issues that we're seeing. I did some research and thinking about what's a local issue and what's a nationwide issue, and found a Pew report saying that 58% of educators say that they have to multiple times per week stop instruction to handle a behavioral issue. And so that's something I want to hear what solutions are ahead, but we need to stay aware of it. So thank you. I also wanted to note that I enjoyed my annual tradition of taking my family to see the Oregon Chorale. This part of Oregon's only adult professional choir, and the conductor, artistic director, is the a choir teacher at Century High and also works at R.A. Brown. And so it's always great to see him every year. And they do a program, Emerging Voices internship, where students from Hillsboro and Beaverton high schools join the choir for several months for all their practices and for the performance. And so it was really neat to see two students from Liberty High School singing with the choir. So it's always special to see that. Also, I wanted to note a lot of colleagues that have served in leadership roles or other statewide education roles. I know with OSBA and other forums. So sort of inspired by your good example. When the recent opportunity came out for me to take on an additional role, I agreed to do it. Many of you may know that in Oregon, we're a fair dismissal state. So
educators can only be dismissed for certain statutory reasons. And if in a rare and unfortunate event that a school board, a school district dismisses a teacher and they feel like it's not for one of those statutory reasons or was arbitrary or unfair, they can appeal it to the Fair Dismissal Appeals Board here in Oregon that examines the whole issue and what happened and can either uphold the dismissal or order reinstatement with back pay if they find it's not statutorily grounded or was excessive or unreasonable. Governor Kotek nominated me to serve on the Fair Dismissal Appeals Board for a 4-year term. And just very recently, the Oregon State Senate voted to confirm my nomination. So I'm in the middle of training and getting presentations from the Oregon Department of Justice on the case law in this area, reading all of the opinions in recent years. But I anticipate after this period, it'll be a relatively small time commitment because those are thankfully rare situations that come up. But I appreciate the opportunity to serve the state in a new way. And when the governor's office was interviewing me, I think that they were impressed. And I told them about what a collegial and collaborative board we have and relationship with our staff and administrators and how that's the spirit that I bring to all of the work I do. Other than that, I wish everyone a happy rest of the year and a happy new year.
Thank you, Director McGuire. Director Harding-Mercado.
Congratulations. I just wanted to quickly piggyback on what Mark was sharing about just having more opportunities to have dialogue and discussion about some of these topics as a board together. We're all coming from different backgrounds and experiences. I am still I'm learning about being a board member and being prepared and asking the right questions. And it's all new in a way that I feel like I won't grow as a better director if I'm not able to hear from the others modeling it and all of that. So I would also just appreciate more time to be able to have more time to ask questions and for me to hear what those questions are, because that makes me leave and be able to reflect. And honestly, that's just how I learn best. So just wanted to share that. And then I just wanted to quickly just recognize how we've had so many students that have been participating in various ways, protests, walkouts, shared speeches, provided testimony in different spaces in schools in the community. And that is not easy. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of them. Their leadership is so powerful, and they should just, no matter what we're doing a lot. And I know we're all doing so much in the background and doing as much as we can. If they're not feeling it, that's telling. And so, to them, I just want to say, always continue to hold us accountable to our values, whether others feel it or not. If you don't, I just appreciate their voices so much. Just want to say that.
Thank you, Director Thomas. Director.
Thank you very much. And thank you to my colleagues for your comments. I had a really wonderful time. I wanted to congratulate all of our students who participated in fall theater productions. I was able to go to all 3 plays. Hill High had a very intense and beautifully designed production of Frankenstein. The Liberty production included, she's not here, but Kira's daughter was in that show, and it was charming and uplifting. And then I got to see Glencoe's very innovative, brand new production of Layla Maria and Bruce Get a Life, and you can still see it this week on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday at Glencoe. So congrats to all those students, and I look forward to the return of Century Theater at some point in the future. I will be very excited when that comes back. Thank you to Audria for your time this week, generously sharing with me so that I could go visit some schools. I got the opportunity to visit Reedville Elementary and see Alicia's wellness room that is underwater themed. It is very, very relaxing in there. I can see why students would want to go. And I also got a chance to visit Indian Hills Elementary School, where I got my nifty new t-shirt. So it just reminds me that this is why I do what I do. So thank you so much for your commitment of time, and thank you to the principals. Seeing students in the classrooms and seeing where they get to learn and seeing the people who are dedicated to teaching them and to supporting them all day long is just so crucial to being able to serve in the way that I want to serve. I also got a chance to attend our fall CCP steering committee. Thank you for all of your effort and Melissa's in planning that, because it's also just such a rich opportunity to hear from both our community partners as well as some of our students. I was lucky enough to sit on a panel with a student from Century High School who is in the CCP program where he does the manufacturing at Gyre Semiconductor. And it was incredible to hear from this student the type of high level technical work that he is expected to complete on a daily, weekly basis with Gyre, and how excited he is to get extra hours when he can working at his semiconductor job, and how excited he is to just be able to use this as a tool to find his future career and find where he fits. So just again, thank you to staff for all that you do and the opportunities that you give us to be able to interact with the students of this community, because they're the reason that we're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kip. I wanted to start off by saying thank you to my fellow board members for all the work that you do. It's very appreciated, and know our community also appreciates the work that you take, aside from your day-to-day life, to come here and do the work that you do. So thank you. And I want to say thank you to our superintendent and our cabinet team who do a lot of the work as well to keep our community great and our district great. So thank you for all the work that you do and for all our presentations. And I wanted to say happy holidays, Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. And I hope this year, and on a sort of a positive note within your family and community, and hope the spirit is high and it continues into the next year. So I know it's a very dark time right now, but we got to keep going and got to keep doing the work, right? So I appreciate all of you. So thank you. And I will adjourn this meeting at 9:16.